Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the GBYWN Australia podcast. I am your host, as per usual, Aston Crude, and I believe this is episode 81. And we are going back, all the way back to one of my first guests on the podcast. He is none other than Australian Backyard Wrestling Hall of Famer, former GBYWN Australian Heavyweight Champion, UWF Heavyweight Champion, and one half of the last ever ICWS Tag Team Champions. And I finally brought him back to talk about the last part of his career, spanning from False Finish 2015 up until Resolution 5. And that man is Daniel Johnston.
Hello.
How you going, mate? Well, usually we're here doing a review of a show, but instead we're talking about the remainder of your career. Are you excited?
I am excited. 77 episodes later, we are back here to explore the second half of the saga that is my tenure as a backyard wrestler. And I should point out, how fucking cold is it right now?
It's fucking freezing. As my guests on the podcast remember, I always walk inside to grab beers in the middle of the interview. It's so cold tonight, I've brought the whole six-pack out here, and it's just sitting there on the table because it won't fucking matter. It's going to be cold for the remainder of this interview, DJ.
Sort of like, remember that fucking ad for the Western Star spreadable butter where the guy's out in the Arctic?
Yes.
He pulls the butter out of the fridge and he can still spread it without splitting the piece of bread.
Yeah. What a bunch of shit.
Well, that would never happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the butter would be really, really firm and difficult to spread.
Like,
but this is like kind of, we're taking that principle and making it work in our favour, because now you don't have to keep getting up off your ass and going in to get the beers.
That's right. There you go.
They're right there on the table.
The only thing now I have to worry about is when I need to do a wee.
Well, no, I mean, Belinda's asleep, so you can just piss outside.
I can just piss outside, and I probably will, as you're all probably used to people talking, and in the background, in the distant background, you can hear a little piddle hitting a brick wall.
Just a little...
Just that... Right, so, DJ, where were we? Well, I believe at the end of your interview with myself the first time around, we had just hit Hard Time 4 when you took on Big Ace, as there was supposed to be a feud going on between DJ and Still Kemsley against AAA. But that soon, slowly but surely, was realised, okay, that's not going to be taking place because Arthur Aries has left the Federation. So we moved towards the, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to go to ICWS. We're going to go to ICWS. Fuck False Finish. Fuck all that shit. We'll get to that when we get to it. Okay. ICWS. It's coming back. I don't know if we explored this on your last podcast.
I think we did a little bit.
Did we?
I think we got into it a bit and the whole drama with the organisation of the shows and stuff like that.
Did we talk about Thug Life?
I think we did. I think we might have even done a couple by then because... the first interview, April 2015. So, okay, no. So we must have discussed the fact that it was coming back, but we might not have done any shows yet.
I think we got there when we did that. Remember when I went to your house and my computer crashed in the middle of the interview? We'd done about 90 minutes and we lost the whole thing. We might have talked about some of it then, but it never made it.
All right, so for anyone that's not familiar, ICWS did make a comeback in mid-2015.
And how did that come about, DJ?
It basically came about because I was sitting there and WZWA was firing on all cylinders and we had a lot of people that were wrestling and I was getting sick of only wrestling once a month, especially if
It was once every 2 months in 2015.
Once every 2 months, so there you go. So the basic principle was we can bring back ICWS while there's a surplus of people doing backyard wrestling and fill in the gaps where there's no WZWA event with an ICWS show. So that way people are still wrestling once a month, but maybe it'll be fun to have two different atmospheres, two different sets of angles going on and everything like that.
Yeah,
just two different products to be part of. And I will say, overall, at the outset,
Pure.
that it does end up... I would think most of us, don't have that bad memories of it. I mean, like, the events themselves turned out good. There was some rockiness with the organisation. I don't think that I was, like, fully prepared.
Let's get to that when we get to it, DJ.
Well, I'm kind of doing, like...
Are you doing an overall review before? Okay, go for it. Sorry, excuse me.
I don't think that I was quite prepared to... like put in the level of organisation that was probably necessary to make it perfect, because I was going through a lot of shit at the time mentally, and just all kinds of stuff was going on. Some people voiced those feelings to me, and I took exception to it, because the way that I looked at it, and frankly still do look at it, is that I was putting in the effort to give the guys another opportunity to wrestle once a month. So even if it wasn't that great, at least it was still something. Having said that, though, the events and the shows, and I guess I would say the cards themselves, we actually pumped out some good shows. And especially Thug Life, the first one that we did, was a really good show. I know that everyone enjoyed it. And then it kind of went into a bit of a lull. Halloween Held, the second last one that we did, that was also a really good show. That was the final one that we did at my house at the time. And then the final one that we did was a really good show where we were using a different bass, and everyone was reticent that, it's going to hurt, and we're not used to this bass. And yet the show ended up being fucking amazing. So I'd say that despite those little issues that we had with the organisation and the few dramas that we had there, and I accept responsibility for the organisation not being fully up to snuff, because I've made my peace with the whole thing now that we've finished it off right. I'd say that was probably 75% a success, Everyone had fun. We got together. People had some great matches. There was opportunities to do things that they wouldn't have got to do otherwise.
Right.
I got to have a little feud with Kyle, and I did like a strap match with him.
Kyle got to be a heel.
Kyle got to be a heel for the first time.
And we've been wanting to do that
Vincent
for ages.
Graves returned to wrestling because of ICWS. We got to see Blade make his only appearances on the ICWS base. So Ryan Tate actually won his first ICWS championship there.
Lots of things did happen, DJ.
Lots of things did happen, and as usual, because we're all a group of friends and a group of bros, we had fun. We
Thug Life, we certainly had fun, didn't we? That was the first show on the 2015 ICWS calendar. A lot of hype for it. We were keen. Everyone had been on your case about bringing back ICWS in some way, shape or form. How difficult was it trying to organise getting the base from the Zeppelins to your house and getting it all sorted? Who was there helping out with all that stuff? The
biggest person that was assisting me with the base during this time was Dark Ice. Always available for that kind of assistance when you need him. The movement of the base... really setting it up, pulling it down, moving it from place to place was fucked. That's why at the final show of the return period, we just built a new one and had the other one stored away. So it was a difficult process. Basically, the reason the organisation of the shows was never that great was because...
Get it? Basically?
By the time we set the fucking thing up and had it ready to go... that you were so burned out just from fucking getting that mess sorted out that you didn't really think about all the other shit. You were just like, thank God the ring's up. Let's just get the camera out and film it. But Dark Ice and Chaos were both very helpful with the setting up and packing up. And Ice actually spent his own money to repair the base after we split one of the boards after the first event.
Right.
So that was how that went. And basically, once it was set up, it's not really the kind of thing that's fun to pull back down, but we weren't in the situation where we could just leave it set up. So that was what was really leading to a lot of drama, because I know that...
people would have to leave at a certain time, so I couldn't help.
Like, me and several others were bothered that there were other people in the group that couldn't or wouldn't help pack up and tear down. Everyone had a go at doing it at some stage over the period. It's not like the only people that didn't help was like Jack and fucking Deacon. Yeah. Basically, honestly, love them, but they didn't really do anything to... Actually, no, that's not true. Deacon actually did assist Jack would be the only one. Sorry, Jack, love you, but you didn't help.
He's not listening.
And he complained that there was no food provided, despite knowing or should know that my family's poor and we can't afford to just feed people just because we.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you see DJ's fashion, you would know that the family is not very well off. Thug life overall, DJ. Before we get there, you must be rubbing your hands together. You're like, oh my God, I get to book for the first time since 2012. I get to actually book properly now and think of these ideas for these guys headed towards maybe Twisted Metal or something like that. Wherever you're headed, you must be pretty excited. You're coming up with ideas on your own. You get to book by yourself here. How was that?
It was fun. Even during all the negative side of what was going on, the booking was always fun because I would bring in, like, I would seek your advice, or I would seek even Chaos's advice, or even Garrett's advice. And my philosophy with booking that comeback period was that I was just going to try and do the best card that I could possibly do and then loosely link it between shows. Like, so WZWA had the intricate storylines and angles. I was going to do the opposite because I knew I was dealing with like a smaller roster, less resources in general, probably less enthusiasm over the overall product because really the main thing was just having another match under your belt. So I just thought, let's try and focus on just making a great card. Like, these two will wrestle a good match against each other.
So that's what your focus was for Thug Life, and I think we had some tremendous things take place at Thug Life. I mean, if you look back, I mean, when I look back at Thug Life, I felt the atmosphere, the old ICWS atmosphere. It was there. There was a lot of people in the crowd there that day. You know, your family was there watching, and all the boys were there, and we were keen to see how this was going to go down, and it went down a treat. You know, your brother, Wicked Nick James, made his return to Backyard Wrestling after several years of being out of the game. Vincent Graves made his return after, 6 or 7 years. I can't remember how it goes, but
long time. And have you had Vincent on the podcast yet?
Not yet. No.
There's quite a story behind him coming back.
Well, maybe I'll save that story for when I do interview him. If I mean, unless you want to indulge us,
I can nutshell it, which is that he basically, a switch went off in his head one day where he was just keen on wrestling again, and he put a lot of time and thought into his character and making it good, and committed to like actually physically getting in the ring and listening to my instruction, like teaching him how to take bumps and stuff like that. And everything that he would learn to do, like a bump or doing a wrist lock or anything like that, he just knew how to do it perfectly. That's why when you watch his matches back, he never throws a bad clothesline. He fucking never does a bad sidewalk slam. Things like that, because his understanding of the shit that he learned was so good and he paid so much attention. Like, that really gave him a leg up, and all he had to do was focus on being aggressive and making his stuff look good after that. So, yeah, that's really the story behind that.
I mean, I remember seeing him at your 21st and asking him about how he used to do the wrestling, and he almost seemed embarrassed that he never done it.
Yeah, that's
right. And then all of a sudden I see him walk out, and I'm like, no way, I did not think he would want to. Yeah. But he did. No. But Thug Life was a really good show, and you battled Rex, you know, the long-standing rivalry that you guys have had over the years in Backyard Wrestling. How did you feel that went with him?
Well, I don't think that we've ever had a bad match.
It's almost like a continuation of that match that happened in 2014 when you battled him at Aussie Anarchy.
Every time we have a match, I feel like it's always different, but the one common thread that's in there is that it's hard-hitting and it makes sense and it flows. And I think there's probably something out of each match that I can take that I prefer over the other matches in the series. And we're going to talk about a couple of them today, but my favorite thing probably from the Thug Life match was the hard hitting. To me, that match was really the most physical, hard hitting one that we've had singles wise. We've really beat the crap out of each other worse in some tag team matches, but singles wise, that was a physical match. I remember hearing people in the crowd actually going like, oh shit, like they're beating the crap out of each other. And that's always the kind of match that I love to have, because that's really one thing that I can offer that maybe nobody else can do quite as well. And
I would say, for me personally at Thug Life, I wanted to have a real throwback to my old ICWS days. I wanted to be as hungover as fucking possible, and I was. And I wrestled a match with Chaos in the main event, finally getting my title shot that I had worked for in the old ICWS for about a year and a half. Finally got the title shot. Very happy with the match with Chaos, and I was happy that Kev got to see two big bulls going at it.
Two big bulls going at it. Classic Kev phrase now, and all he did was say it once in passing. But
so Thug Life was a success as far as I'm concerned. The next show that took place was because of a WZWA show getting cancelled at the last second by Jack. Which we won't get into. I'm sure we'll get into at a different point. But it's all about that base.
There's
one-day tournament to get a title shot against the new junior heavyweight champion, Ryan Tate. Before we get to all about that base, what was the idea about bringing in a junior heavyweight championship instead of continuing the hardcore?
Well, it's not that there was a disliking for the hardcore championship, and I know that we sort of retired the hardcore championship officially at the final show, but basically the reason for swapping it out was because the environment that we had, and once again, same philosophy as the booking, we didn't have the numbers or the resources or the physical space and environment to actually accommodate hardcore matches. So I said, the hardcore championship in ICWS, like all wrestling companies have their weird hierarchy and their flow of things, and the hardcore title was always like our mid-card title, our stepping stone to the ICWS championship. Most people, if not all, that won the ICWS title also won the hardcore championship. I think with the exception of maybe Mykonos didn't win the hardcore. But anyway, so that was the first reason, was that we basically couldn't continue to do hardcore, but we also needed something that represented that middle stepping stone of being in title contention, but you're not in the main event. Because ICWS only ever had 2 or 3 people in the main event scene, because that's the way we liked it. The cards were booked more like boxing matches. What makes the most sense at this point in time to be the challenger for the title.
Right.
And the second reason was, by the time that we came back for I know we're supposed to try and be funny, but it's turning into just more.
That's okay. It's all right. We'll get funny soon.
So the second reason for the change was that, excuse me. It was by the time that we'd made the return to ICWS, the wrestling skill of everyone involved, whether they'd been in the original ICWS or not, was probably much higher. Not that the stuff that happened in 2010 to 2012, 2013 wasn't great, but the skill level, technically speaking, and with the understanding of the basics, was that much better, because we now had like ropes and turnbuckles, and so all of that stuff plays into it. Everybody was a little bit, a couple of notches higher than they were last time ICWS was around. So I felt like if everyone's going to have that skill level, it's not really fair just to have the main event title. We kind of need to acknowledge that there are a lot of great wrestlers still going in ICWS, and Ryan Tate was the first person that I thought of, and was always going to be the first person to win the title. Right. In fact, basically, like, once I thought about Ryan being back in ICWS and how committed I knew he would be, but I also knew that he wouldn't be in the main event scene, I was like, well, we have to make a title for Ryan.
Yeah.
So that's the third reason as well.
Right. It was about doing something to build Ryan, and all about that base certainly built Ryan. One-day tournament to get a number one contender for the Junior Heavyweight Championship. On that show, you've wrestled Luke Monet.
Yes, first time wrestling Luke Monet, and I will say about this, it's going to be another long-winded thing, but I'll try and keep it short because I know we have a lot to get through. Mm-hmm. But there are kind of two things with this. One, it was in the wake of a cancelled WCWA show, so it was just, I said to everyone, anyone who wants to come down to my place who can get there on that day, come down and we'll do like just a fun event.
And I refused because I was so angry at what happened at WCWA that I couldn't even fathom being anywhere else.
So
but
it
in
wasn't
my fucking bedroom, fucking sobbing.
So the goal of it wasn't to do
cunt, Jack, you cunt. Sorry.
So it was just going to be like a fun show for guys to come around and mess around and have a match, and that's really what it ended up being. But then the pretext to doing a tournament to decide another number one contender was another little idea that I had, because I thought, well, that's a little way to maybe elevate somebody else, just give them a little something.
And also put some focus on the junior heavyweight title on one
yes,
specific
because
show.
I also knew that I wanted Ryan to have the next title shot, because I felt like he deserved it. I mean, let's face it, just like he was, this year, back then he was also just killing it as well. Nobody was more dedicated than Ryan.
Right.
So everyone was having fun, but the thing is, when you have that kind of, there's kind of different, a real thin line to tread. When you have an event where everyone's just like, oh, let's just fuck around and have a few chuckles, it can either be really shit because no one's taken it totally seriously, or it can be really good even though no one's taken it totally seriously. And I think that because we had the tournament thread running through it for the title shot, that elevated it enough that people were taking their matches just seriously enough, even though they weren't.
Yeah.
They were having fun and being real loose. So me and Monet had our first match ever. It was a fun match. I tried out a couple of new things. It was a really enjoyable match. He was fun to work with. I remember thinking I look forward to wrestling him again at a more serious show. Later on that day, Tim actually showed up at the show.
That's what I wanted to ask. How did the Tim Justice return come about? Because I remember hearing about it being like, fucking hell, Tim, I just asked you to return to WCWA 2 months ago. And you said no, but suddenly it's okay now? Why? I was confused at Tim's motivation as to all of a sudden just springing up randomly at an ICWS show when I'd asked him formally, would you like to return to WCWA? So how did that happen?
All right, so it's pretty simple. So even when everyone else was having their problems with Tim and stuff like that, Tim and I have always gotten along fine. We've never really had a problem. I'll hang shit on him just like everybody else, but that's just because I hang shit on everyone. But we've always gotten along great. And I remember thinking, I think I invited Tim to the event when I was doing the Facebook invites. Just purely because I knew him and I hadn't seen him in a while and he used to be in ICWS. But I don't think I expected him to actually show up.
Right.
So he shows up. And because it happened to be just a fun little day for a tournament, I just said to him, I was just chatting to him and shit, and he was like, well, bro, I want a match. And then I was like, well, everyone else has already kind of been booked. We can't really insert Tim, and I didn't think that anyone would want to add him in there for a triple threat. So I was like, fuck it, I'd be keen on another match because I was in a good mood that day, and I had a decent match with Monet.
And you'd never wrestled Tim before.
But I'd never wrestled Tim singles, so I said, I'll do it. And Tim had been doing the EPW training, so he had a better understanding of what to do. He'd even been on EPW cards by that point. And he just said, to my surprise, actually, because I expected him to be a smug little cunt, but he just said, bro, you just decide what to do and we'll just go with it.
Right.
So we ended up having this great little match that was basically 80% in my favor. I just beat the crap out of him. I gave him a senton onto his back. I did all kinds of shit to him. I chopped him on the back.
Right.
We had a hectic match. I tapped him out. And then afterwards, he was like, oh, thanks, man. Great match. I'd love to come back to ICWS again. I don't think he ever did. He attended another event.
He wrestled at Seasons Beatings.
All right, he did too. All right,
Which
you're
we'll
going to have to fill me back in on that.
That's cool. I wish Ryan was here so he could fill us both in on shit, because I can't remember that much. But
so
that's pretty cool. It was an impromptu show, and all of a sudden you get a return of a guy that used to be a part of ICWS.
So he just showed up and basically asked if he could wrestle, and I was like, sure. But then the other thing before we move on, because I feel like I've already kind of taken it off the rails and been too long-winded.
Well, we are 25 minutes into the show already, and we have a whole
because
fucking
it's like
2 years to
it
get
has
through.
to be discussed though. Like there's only so much I can shorten,
Right.
You know. But anyways, the final thing that I'll say before the next point is that a lot of people probably haven't seen All About That Bass because it's an obscure event, and ICWS doesn't have the following that WZW does. But I recommend to anyone listening that's not part of our core group of boys just to go back and watch it, because it's like a real Iron Man performance by Ryan Tate. Like, it's a fantastic fucking performance by Ryan. He does fantastic. He's in like 3 different matches, and he just gets his ass kicked and kicks their ass in all the matches.
I thought he just wrestled in the main event against the person who won the tournament.
I swear I remember him wrestling more than once, but even if he wrestled only once, it doesn't matter because
I think it was Monet that wrestled 3 times.
Right, it was Monet that wrestled 3 times,
Yeah.
and that was the Iron Man performance. But I still want to single out Ryan as well, because that fucking main event match was just amazing. And also, it was the final time that Dark Ice wrestled in an ICWS show, because he wrestled Chris.
That's right.
They had a great little match too, and Ice did the honors. So yeah, it was actually a pretty cool show. Moving on though.
What was the idea behind Ice being general manager?
Well, I knew
Because that took place at Thug Life.
Because I knew that Chris Zeppelin, not that he had anything against yachting, but he was too busy and he'd moved on at that point in his life.
It was totally done.
And Ice had retired, and I thought, let's give something for Ice to come onto the show. You know, he can maybe throw a couple of choke slams. He can come out there and
Although he did wrestle on Thug Life and All About
Yeah,
That
he
Bass.
did. He did. He only did the GM thing solely on the other shows, but the first couple he wrestled too.
Yeah.
But the point was, he was retired, or supposed to be retired, so I thought, that'll be fun. Let's make him the GM, because I wanted to also do this thing where, because you had like the history with Dark Ice and Chaos, and obviously Chaos and Ice had their history, like, because he had so much history as a villain in ICWS, we could do like this multi-layered element to the storyline where he's like the one character that's kind of in everyone's story. But like all the other characters in ICW have their own story going on, but Ice is a part in all of them because he's the GM and they've all got history with him.
Yeah.
So that was the goal behind that, and I think he did a fine job, and I think he enjoyed it. Like, he wore his suit and he would come out, and yeah, I think he had a lot of fun doing it.
Cool. So we go to the Dream.
Yep. That's the infamous missing event.
Yes.
The one that we don't have
footage of it, but you wrestle Kyle to kind of begin your feud with him, which is a 2-show feud. Obviously, we call this show The Dream because the day before Dusty Rhodes had passed away.
Oh, fuck, how devastating was that?
So you changed the name of the show from Doors of Perception, which would be the next show, to The Dream. You work with Kyle for the first time. How did you find that experience with Kyle as opposed to your first match with him back in 2014 in WCWA?
Well, actually, I remember thinking, first of all, that Kyle was a heel for the first time. And it was actually fun because I feel like him as a heel, he was able to come out of his shell a bit more. Personality-wise, and it was, he did a good job at like laying a beating down on the babyface. Like, it was fun, and he was aggressive, and he enjoyed doing it. So that was the first thing. Second of all, wrestling-wise, the first time that I wrestled him, it was a great match because he had a natural athleticism and like an understanding of how to sell and stuff. But he was a bit timid because he was a newer guy, and I was a bit more experienced. And this time, it was like you could tell that he'd made up that experience in the interim between the 2 matches, and he was a lot more confident, and he wasn't, he and I didn't really discuss anything at all for that match, and we just kind of went out there, and, yeah, I beat the crap out of him, he beat the crap out of me, just kept it simple, but it was an entertaining match, and I remember the crowd enjoying it, so...
And you pick up the win.
Yeah,
Kyle.
pick up the win, yeah.
Around this time, I do recall a bit of back and forth with you and some of the guys over your booking.
Yep.
I do recall a moment in time where you and Blade had hung out and Blade helped you with booking. and try to keep you on track. I don't know look, fuck, it's a couple years ago now, so it's a little bit difficult to remember everything, but people were a bit confused about this and that. You know, some stories didn't have the continuity that they expected. I guess people were expecting what WCWA was with that stuff, but how would you respond to what was going on then with everyone's I wouldn't say complaints, but just concerns?
Well, I mean, look, the only thing that I can say about that situation is that my feelings were hurt, you know? I felt like I was bending over backwards, having to explain to my parents all the time why the base hasn't been pulled down yet, and it's alright, you know, it's not their fault that, you know, like, just having to convince my parents to let everyone over again, and, you know, here I am trying to fill the void that's been left by WZWA, only doing one show every 2 months. And it hurt my feelings, you know, that my friends didn't enjoy what I was doing, because it felt like the only ones that were enjoying it was, like, myself, Gareth, Blade, I think, and maybe, like, one other person. Like, maybe yourself and Chaos, because you guys had a pretty well-fleshed-out feud at the time.
My story was fine. Like, I was fine with it.
But then, so honestly, it really hurt my feelings. You know, I can understand where they're coming from.
Because you had my story, sorry to cut you off, you had my story for me, but you were allowing me and Chaos to fill in any blanks that we needed to fill in.
The thing is that everyone else had that same freedom, and that was what I wanted from everyone else. I was like, I remember saying repeatedly, you know, if you want to do a story, like have more of a continuity in your storyline, just run by me roughly what you want to do, and like just go ahead and do it, you know. I think that from the beginning I made it clear that this wasn't going to be like WZWA, and unfortunately a lot of the guys had become accustomed to that real detailed booking, and they weren't prepared for suddenly I have to cut a promo and no one's telling me anything about what I have to say. Like, because all it would be was cut a promo about your next match. Your next match is going to be against this. Which I don't think there's anything wrong with that style of booking. Because I was thinking that people would use ICWS as a platform to try out different things that they weren't allowed to do at the time in WZWA. You know, I was just thinking, like, this will be more free. You know, I can't compete with Carl's style of booking. I'm not capable of like managing it, especially with my mental health at the time. So let's kind of just give him a bit more latitude and just. But then they kind of reacted the wrong way to that. Like that strategy backfired. I thought everyone would think it was great, but the only people that thought it was great was like maybe the people that I just mentioned a second ago, plus Rex, plus like I think Ryan embraced it a bit, but. The rest of them, the other half of the roster, didn't seem to like it that much, and you know that's fine. Everyone has their own opinions on how things should be dealt with. So, but yeah, it hurt my feelings. My feelings are still hurt about it, really, because no one ever kind of saw my point of view back then.
Yeah. Doors of Perception is the next show, and once again, the day before, Rowdy Roddy Piper passes away. But we keep on with the name of the show, Doors of Perception. Obviously, you're listening to the Doors quite a bit at this stage.
Yep. Still to this day, at this point in time, the Doors are my favourite band.
Doors of Perception, you had a rematch with Kyle in the
Warnbro whipping match.
Warnbro whipping match. Very good matchup, I would say, and it was awesome to see Kyle get the win here, and he's being elevated as like, you know, a real threat to maybe the junior heavyweight championship. He's being, you know, just having a light shone on him for a little bit there. How do you feel Doors of Perception went?
Well, I'd have to go back and like look at the rest of the card, but
I believe I wrestled Steel.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Oh God,
Rex versus.
I think Rex versus Chaos.
Yep,
for the title.
That's right. That I do remember that show now that we've jogged my memory there, and I do feel like it was a successful event. Like Chaos continued his meteoric rise to, building towards the planned match between you two at Twisted Metal 8, and all the matches were great. Rex and Chaos really tore the house down. They were both really happy with that match. And yeah, I really was happy with the Warnbro whipping match. The crowd was into it. Me and Kyle were into it. I think that Kyle really had earned being elevated a bit more by that point. Not that I'm patting myself on the back. It's not that I elevated him. It's just that he won this gimmick match under his new character, and so that was an elevation for his character at the time.
Right.
I was happy to put him over as well because he's sick.
My source of frustration at this point was mainly the 2 shows after Thug Life. My initial opponent was not there, and I had to wrestle someone else.
Yeah.
Talk about frustration with, you've booked an event, you've booked a card, and then on the day, this person and this person doesn't show up.
I mean, you know how highly strung I am and how stressed out about stuff I get and how anxious I get over stuff. Like, imagine the most anxious that I get in 2017 and then times that by like 50, and that's how you have me every single day that we did an ICWS show. Like, after the first couple of shows, once all this issues with booking and everything came out, it was already at the point where I just hated doing the shows.
Right.
I didn't even enjoy them anymore.
Because I remember I was supposed to wrestle Deacon, and he didn't show up. And then I was supposed to wrestle Blade, but he was having depression issues, so he couldn't show up. So I had just different... I didn't mind, because I ended up getting to wrestle Steel for the first and only time, so that was cool.
And I mean, obviously, you would know about it, and you've talked about it. When people don't show up to the events...
So many times, you'd book the show, everyone knew about the show, and then on the day, he's not coming... You'd have to get on the person's fucking home phone and call their house and try and see where they are. They're not coming. Okay, well, fuck. It's shit, because then you have to try and fill in these holes in the show.
I think it's always a problem when people don't show up for the planned card, because much like when you're painting a picture or making a film or writing a story, when things go wrong that cause you to have to change your vision of whatever the creative medium might be, it's, no matter how good it is, it's never exactly as perfect as you pictured it being.
Yeah.
And the only real way to approach that situation and handle that situation is just to embrace it and kind of roll with it. And that's what we used to do back in the classic incarnation of ICWS, because you'd be dealing with anywhere from 1 to 4 no-shows every single show. And that was when we only had a roster of 10 people. But we always managed to make it work, and not only make it work, but do something that still made sense.
Yeah.
It was interesting because we would book the card perfectly that makes the most sense, and it was always oh God, I can't imagine doing it any different. There's just no other option except for this. This is the only thing that makes sense. And then you've got maybe
the space of about 20 minutes to figure out something different.
And you manage to figure something else out, and most of the time it
works out okay. You know?
But in this situation, we had even less people on the roster. People are already frustrated about their organization. I'm stressing out non-stop because of the bullshit I'm already dealing with, and the base, and me being upset that people aren't liking what I'm doing. And then when that's compounded by people not showing up for the events, then I'm thinking, fuck, this is just going to make my booking look even worse. People are complaining about my booking, but at every single event so far there's been people no-showing. So how can they fully see the plan that I've been trying to institute? Because they didn't have the discipline that they did with WZWA, where people knew it was a big deal if they didn't show up.
With this being the topic right now, what happened with your brother? Such a great return at Thug Life, and he's missed the next 2 shows. What were your plans for Nick? What did you want to do with him? Ease him in slowly with a couple of good matches, and then try and move him forward into something more, I guess.
My plan with Nick was simply to... I mean, he wrestled Kyle at the first return show. That was because he was getting back into wrestling as well at the time, similar to how Gareth did. And he still is into wrestling and stuff, but his life is just so busy, and he has a child now and responsibilities, and he lives in Bunbury, and he just can't really... His life is much more of a family life. It's not like with Mykonos, who, yeah, he lives far away, but he still does... His life is about him, basically. Still solely about him.
Once you have a kid, life's no longer about you.
So... He came and did the first show, and I know that he was really eager to do more, and I think if WZWA had continued, he probably would have done at least a few more spot shows here and there.
I just wanted to wrestle him, and I never fucking got to.
Had we been continuing ongoing indefinitely, I reckon that it would almost be certain that he would have popped up here and there on a few shows. But the original plan for him was just to have him against opponents like Kyle, who would take care of him, not hurt him, and kind of give him a match that looked good. And just, sort of build him up, give him a few wins, and then slowly start easing him back into, wrestling sort of more advanced level guys. You couldn't put Nick into a match against Rex straight away.
No.
Because it would have been too
intense for him.
But you could have put Nick in a match with Rex maybe 4, 5, 6 matches down the line.
Gotcha. But did you have discussions with Nick about, are you coming this weekend? No, I'm not. Did it piss you off at all? Fuck, I'm trying to get my brother back into this, and I know you're probably very understanding of his situation, but were you like, God, I just really wish I could have him there every time?
Yeah, I'd say it was probably, I was more frustrated rather than pissed off, because if anyone had an excuse why they couldn't make it, it would be Nick. Same as if I booked Mykonos on an ICWS show and he said, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm hell keen, and then said, no, I can't get down. I've been invited to some family barbecue in the afternoon, and I wouldn't be able to drive there and then drive back in time, I'd be equally as understanding for him. So you don't get pissed off the same way that you would get pissed off with somebody else. But, yeah, there was definitely the feeling of, fuck, I'm not angry at Nick that he can't make it, because I understand totally.
You're just angry at the missed opportunity.
Yeah, but it would be fucking sick.
It
would be sick if he was there, though.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was basically just that. There was anger sometimes. A couple of times there was anger when it's been like, dude, I'll literally pay the petrol money for you to come down and do this. All you've got to do is drive. I'll pay you the petrol money, and then he'd be like, oh well, and it would come back that the missus doesn't want to go down. So right. And he can't go down without him because she'd be stuck up there.
Yeah.
So sometimes it would come down to that, and it wouldn't even be his fault. He'd be completely willing to come down on that date, and nothing would be interfering, but family obligations would just get in the way.
Gotcha. One last tidbit before we get to Halloween Hell, which is probably going to be a difficult part of this podcast, but there's a segment at Doors of Perception where your good friend, the champion, puts the original ICWS championship in the garbage bin. Talk to me about what happened after that.
There's nothing to say about it.
He put the belt in the bin.
He put the belt in the bin
for the segment.
That's his responsibility to pull it out. It was forgotten about. Then
what happened later?
The whole thing about people fucking saying that I should have taken the belt out of the bin, that's just bullshit.
Was that later that night? No, I've got to poke at you sometimes here in this podcast.
No.
Did you guys, were you guys having a sleepover that night, and he mentioned that the belt was still in the bin at whatever time, and you said, we'll go get it tomorrow morning?
And that's what he probably did say that. I don't really remember that conversation, but I know myself, I know my flaws, and I can probably totally buy me being fucking stoned out of my mind because I was smoking a lot of weed at the time, and me being all rugged up in my bedroom and just watching a movie and just enjoying being stoned.
And probably not fathoming
Yeah.
that tomorrow is bin
Yeah,
day.
yeah. And him just going like, oh man, you know, the belt's outside, and me just going, oh, it's fucking cold, man. Like, just fucking, man. Let's just grab it tomorrow, man. You want to get something to eat? Like, yeah, sure, bro. So fucking, yeah, you know, if he mentioned that, and maybe he did, if he says that he did, he probably did. Yeah, that's on me. But I also think that he's the one that threw it in the bin, and I had all this other shit to worry about organizationally wise. So of course I was going to lose track of it, and it was just one of those shit things that happened. So I understand that everyone's like was attached to the belt because we had it for a long time, but I'm not really that upset about it. In fact, the way that I look at it is the fact that the belt never was recovered and we had a new belt by the following event. Like, that only just makes it even more meaningful when he chucked it in the bin, because he really did end up chucking it in the bin.
I don't agree with that.
You don't have to agree with it.
I think that's a terrible thing to say, because that belt, what it symbolises...
How is it a terrible thing to say?
It's very important how much that piece of cardboard, what it symbolises. People held that, people loved that thing.
It does. Of course it does.
It's not poetic, it's just shit, dude.
Well, alright, okay, but all I'm saying is that I don't accept 100% blame for that. I don't think that's fair.
50% blame is fine, because Chaos probably should have got up too and grabbed it.
50% is fine, I'll accept that, you know, but these things happen. Like, it's like this, and that's what this podcast is for. Like, it's not all supposed to be like rainbows and lollipops. Like, yeah, that did it. You know, if I could go back in time and, like, take the belt out of the bin, like, I probably would. Because I like the new design of the belt as well. I think it's awesome. I think it would have been sick to still have that belt. But it would have been sick to also have the old one just as a memento.
Of course.
Know?
And I still want to get the dimensions. I want to know exactly what was used, and I want to make an exact replica so we can pretend that it never happened. One day I'll do that.
I remember what it's like.
Well, we need to make a replica, and we'll pretend that it never happened. Right, let's move on. Now, if we thought that was negative, we're getting to Halloween Hell.
Well, I don't even remember
Halloween Hell was not a good day, DJ. It was not a good day. Probably the worst, I think, of the run of ICWS 2015. I think everything before that was positive. Okay, there's a little bit of issues here and there about the booking, blah, blah, blah. I've dealt with that shit too, man. But Halloween Hell, not a good day. I get there at 10:30. We set up the base, Fuck. People are late, some people don't show up. Okay, the base is set up at 12:30. Oh, we don't have a camera.
Oh, my God.
Where the fuck, who's got the camera? Oh, obviously they're not coming today, so we don't have a camera.
Fuck, you know, like...
And then what are you thinking at that point? Shit, we don't have a fucking camera. Because you assume... The camera that's usually used.
Well, I had a camera to use,
but you didn't think you were going to need to use it.
So here's the thing: is that I had access to the big camera, so I knew that no matter what happened, we'd be able to use it. But I'd messaged ahead and asked Monet, I think it was, to bring the camera, and he said yeah.
And he wasn't on the show.
And he didn't end up showing up. So, like, the stuff that you're saying, like, people being late, people not showing up, that's all, not all of that is in my control. But at the time, because of all the other negative shit that was going on, I was feeling like all that shit is on my shoulders. Like, even if it's not my fault, I'm feeling like it's directly my fault. And then compound that was a really, really stressful day for me. I was, like, literally, like, panic attack the whole day until I went for my match, and then the panic attacks continued sporadically after that as well.
I mean, this is the timeline of events, my friend. We realised about 12:30 we don't have a camera,
and then it took fucking ages.
You had to go back and get it from your other place that you lived in.
Yeah.
And then that took about 45 minutes, I'd say, for you to get there, get back, and it's all sorted, and you got to probably charge the camera or whatever. Then you had to put your makeup on, your face paint, which we'll get to in a second. The show finally started at 2:30. You must have been a bit upset about everything going on there.
I was very upset. I felt like I'd let everyone down, and simultaneously I felt like I was let down by certain people in the group. I felt angry at myself, angry at everyone else, angry at mum, angry at dad, angry at I was just mad. Like, I was just angry, you know?
Right.
I was very upset. I was actually, when I was doing the makeup and stuff, I was actually in my room, like, crying. I was that upset. That's why it took so long. Because I was really, really upset.
Because I'll tell you what, man. While you guys were gone to get that camera, and while you were getting your makeup on, we were sitting in a group, and a lot of the guys were like, I don't even feel like wrestling at this point because we've been waiting for 4 hours.
Yeah, because it was... The whole thing was fucked, you know? Like... And then it was made even worse, because when I finally was ready to start the show, and I heard even more shit about people not liking how things were going, then I was like... That really set me off, because then I was like, you guys think that you've had it bad because all you've had to do is sit there and wait. Like, how many WZWA shows have I been at where you cunts have, like, sat around and wasted hours of time, like, despite being told what needs to be done? You know, like, that was probably the most upset I've ever been at the wrestling, guys, you know, and of course, like, hindsight's 2020, like, of course I understand how everyone else felt and all of that, but yeah, after that event, I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, I don't think that anyone has appreciated anything good that I have done. All they want to do is point out all the negative.
And
Fuck
look,
it.
this
I'm
was the
finished.
situation that I was in, and we'll get to it, the actual show and what you did on the show in a second, but this is the situation I was in. I was getting messages from all the guys. Maybe not, you know, Deacon probably, and Steele probably didn't message me, but, like, everyone else messaging me with this complaint, this complaint, this complaint, this complaint. And I'm like, why are you messaging me for? Tell him. He won't listen to me. Blah, 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 whatever it was. So that's when I decided to raise these concerns with you and try and at least let you be aware of how the guys were feeling, because none of them were actually coming to you with it.
Yeah, and
So
the thing
that
is, like...
became a source of our friendship being strained for quite some time.
It was strained. I never felt like it was that strained, though. Maybe it felt worse on your end, but...
It definitely was, because
was
we weren't
strange.
talking for a while after that.
We
and,
weren't talking for a while because I was... And once again, I still to this day don't feel like anyone fully understood it from my side. Like, maybe after they listen to this podcast, maybe they'll understand a bit more. But I think that for all the negative that I caused, like, I was treated unfairly, and it was like a witch hunt after a certain point in time. Everyone wanted to blame me for everything that was going on instead of coming together as a team and like helping each other elevate the whole thing. And as for everyone saying, oh, he won't listen to me and shit like that, maybe they got that impression because they would say, can I do this storyline? And it would be like some completely ridiculous idea that I didn't agree with, and I would say no. How that's any different from you saying, nah, bro, when someone pitches something dumb to you? I don't know. And I'm not saying that
happened a lot.
I'm not saying that everything that everyone pitched and came to me with was a dumb idea. I'm just saying that might have been some of the reason why people felt like they weren't being listened to. Was just me saying, nah, we're going this way. And, you know, but for the most part, people didn't really message me personally and tell me this is my problem with the show. All they did was post their problems on the thread publicly where everyone could weigh in, and I, by that point, would just be not able to respond and not have an opportunity to defend myself because everyone can just pile on. It wasn't like I'd get a message from Rex going, I'm a little bit confused about where my character's going. Can you tell me, like, in a bit more detail what I'm supposed to do with the next show? It would instead be somebody going, oh, man, these shows, honestly, like, it would be like this. Honestly, not trying to shit on everything, but DJ, dude, there's no fucking direction to these characters at all. And that'd be the post. And I feel like I don't even want to come and wrestle because there's no direction and no fucking proper storylines and shit like that. And then the next person will go, honestly, I have to say, again, I love you, DJ, but I've got to agree. It's honestly fucking shit. Paragraph, 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 everyone just piling on. So then they go to you behind my back to obviously thinking that you'll be able to get through to me and shit like that. And that probably put a strain on our friendship, the way that you were pretty harsh, like the way that you worded it. If you could go back and read the Facebook comments and shit, I think you'd probably agree. And I was just like, how could Carl tell me this shit when he knows exactly what it's like to fucking deal with this bullshit, like, he must know, knowing what my personality is like, how much that this is destroying me and shit like that. And no one was recognizing it. No one was understanding, like, mentally what it was doing to me. And all I wanted to do from the beginning was spend time with my friends and give them an opportunity to wrestle. And everyone just ended up, like, spitting it back in my face.
Right.
That's what happened. That's the version of events as I see it. And, like, maybe things weren't organized and arranged as good as they could be, but, I still have never really, like, forgiven everybody fully for, like, that period because of just how, like, devastating and upsetting it was.
Righto. Well, that's good to get your side of the story there, DJ. So we have a little bit of a break there, I suppose, a couple months before we get to Seasons Beatings 2015. This is the last show that you get to book for the current ICWS at the time. You've built a new base. We've got to try and get things back on track after all the shit that had gone down. We're in a new venue. We're in a backyard again instead of a front yard. I think Seasons Beatings 2015 was a complete success. I think it had the atmosphere that we've been wanting for the past few shows that we might not have gotten because of all the negativity that was going on. But before we really get to that, I want to know about the Strife character, how the idea came about.
Well, I feel like I should address the atmosphere first because it ties in directly with what we just. So actually, immediately as soon as you said that, I got to contradict what I just finished it with. I'd say that I have actually forgiven everyone for it. I want to reword it because now I've figured it out. I'd say that to this day I still get upset thinking about it, but I'm no longer angry about it because I've realized where everyone was coming from, and the next event, I fixed it. I fixed what I was doing wrong, and everyone was back on board, so that kind of like, that repaired it. And I think that after all of that negativity was out in the open, even though it was really upsetting and difficult, I knew privately, like, this is what, like, I changed all these things, but I didn't feel stressed out about organizing it and trying to make it awesome, because I didn't feel like I had to do all these things to please everybody else. I kind of went, well, I'm miserable now. Like, I talked to my mum and I was crying and I said, like, I feel like all my friends hate me, like, they're going off at me about all this shit, and all I wanted to do was help them and contribute and run the Fed again. And she just said, like, well, if you're not enjoying it, then you shouldn't do it. And I just thought to myself, like, what would it take for me to enjoy ICWS again? And the first thing, I was like, fuck this base. It had already been moved back to the Zeppelin's house back then. Not saying anything against the base. I love wrestling on it. I love it. I'm grateful to my dad and his friend and for building it originally, and for Rob Zeppelin for maintaining it and setting it up, all those events. I love it. But as far as me running ICWS, it was like, fuck the base. No one can be fucked going through the effort of setting it up and tearing it down. And why would they? Because you've seen how it fucking works.
It's a nightmare.
It's a
fucking
nightmare.
Especially with the fucking winding, with the Allen keys and all that shit. Fuck that shit.
So the first fucking thing that had to go was the bass. I said to Mum, I've seen this thing online. We're going to get a bunch of old pallets and we're going to fucking just put a bunch of padding and shit on that. And the pallets are going to be the bass. And so that's what we did. I went and bought these pallets on Gumtree. We loaded up my dad's ute with them, me and Ice. And then we brought them back to my mum's house, which had a great little backyard area and a great atmosphere. And I laid them out and I bought a bunch of old blankets and doonas and shit from the salvos, and that provided like the first layer of padding, and then it was foam after. So I just spent like a good 2 days like building the base until it was suitable, like enough to bump on.
Right.
And then when everyone showed up at the event, I thought, oh shit, it's going to be negative again because people started complaining about the bass, until they took a few bumps on it, and then it was fine. Because
right.
I don't remember anyone saying afterwards, oh fuck, the bass really hurts.
I do.
Maybe a couple of people said like, oh, that really hurt when I took that bump, but nobody fucking...
It was a pretty stiff bass, but there's been worse. I've wrestled in XCW on grass, so... But look, I want to scale back. I really want to know about this Strife character.
Alright, the Strife character. So
what
I'll get
were
that.
you thinking with this thing, and where did you want to go with it?
Alright, so I'm sure a lot of people didn't like it, or maybe they thought it was weird, or, but it's a real simple question and a simple answer, and that is I just wanted to do something different.
Was it you'd been watching a bit of Mick Foley at the time and you wanted to...
Possibly.
You used the mandible claw.
Yeah, no, the mandible claw, it wasn't because I'd been watching Mick Foley at the time, it was just because Mick Foley's always been one of my favourites, and I thought this is something that I can use on everyone. And Paul Blade
had to have your fingers in his mouth.
I can use this move on everyone.
Right.
The Strife character was a bust, and like rightfully so, people still make some jokes about it. But I enjoyed doing it. It was fun to like put on a costume and actually, because I wanted to, like I've alluded to just before, I had a lot of mental health issues going on, and I needed to just not be DJ when I was wrestling. I needed to be something completely different.
Right.
That's all that was just, and also me and Vincent Graves were doing the Alliance thing, and I wanted to do, instead of him like having to try to adjust his weird character to suit me, I was just going to get more weird and just kind of like go in the other direction to suit him.
Got you.
So that was it. And then...
and you do realise at this stage... the mandible claw is a debilitating nerve hold, not a submission hold.
Oh, I don't really know the difference. Hey?
Well, Blade tapped out as he had locked it in, and she should have just gone down for a pinfall. He
should have just gone down for a pinfall? Well, I don't know, because on the video games, like people, it's like a submission win if you beat someone with the mandible claw.
Gotcha.
So that's probably why I was like, the base is fucking stiff, but it's a new base, and it turns out to be alright.
So we get to Caesar's beatings.
Yeah, we're there.
And you're wrestling DK.
I'm wrestling DK.
Better known as Deacon Whalen.
Most of that
what
day...
What happened at the end there of that match?
It was a simple... I hit a back suplex, and I don't remember exactly what happened. I think that maybe I didn't communicate to Deacon exactly what I was doing. And so I think he was confused. But by the time that we'd really sort of understood that a mistake had been made, like it was already in air. So I don't think he knew where to go, and then I kind of like went to drop him down thinking that he was in position to take a backdrop, and he at the same time was thinking, what the fuck is DJ doing? Maybe it's a German suplex or something. And he's accidentally, of course, he's ended up I've dropped him too early, and he's accidentally landed right on my sternum and knocked the wind out of me. Right. And I panicked at that point because it had been a long time since I'd been winded like that. To the point where you can't breathe. And so we just finished the match. So that was all it was. I remember at the time, probably because I was being like an angry bitter cunt all the time, that I probably was like, Deacon twisted in midair and it fucked it up. But I'm saying on record right now that was my fault because I was the one picking him up and doing the move. And I don't really make like tons of mistakes like that, but you know, everyone makes mistakes. Like, that was an accident. I ended up getting hurt because I didn't communicate clearly enough what I was doing.
Right.
But then, yeah, throughout that day, the organization of the show was the main focus for me because I wanted it to be awesome. And like you said, yeah, some people were saying, "Oh, fuck, the bass is stiff," but everyone had a great time. Everyone was getting along.
It was a good show.
Everyone had great matches.
I remember saying after your match, bro, you got to record something with you and Deacon right now to get your heat back because you shouldn't have lost yet. You know, you just debuted the new character, and I made the call. You got to do something, so you did a little thing inside.
And then there's like that hilarious thing inside the shed where poor Deacon, man, he's just standing
thrown
there
up against the wall,
and I just fucking throw him against the wall and just.
I loved it. I thought it was good.
So I mean, I would have to say, regardless of anything, I mean, because you said just before that our friendship was strained for a while after the Halloween Hell shit.
Yes, it was.
But we seem to be getting along at the events.
No, I think we're still having trouble by around January, like still after Resolution 4.
But I remember us getting along at the events.
We were fine, but
we got along
on the internet.
But we weren't like held close like we were. Like, we weren't just held chummy like we normally are.
No.
But so that was a good show, and I remember feeling like, all right, you know. That was a good show. People came up to me and said that it was a massive improvement and that they had a lot of fun. And I was fucking excited about that.
While I do I want you to explain, did you think that there would be more shows going to a Twisted Metal 8 instead of the one that we did do? The Twisted Metal 8 that's in your storyline. So was there going to be Aussie Anarchy, then Twisted Metal? Where were you headed with after Seasons Beatings, and why didn't it continue?
You know something, it's that I don't exactly fully remember why we stopped doing the shows.
I think your mum moved out.
Yeah, I think Mum did move out. I remember at that time, that's when all that bullshit with Joe happened as well. So that really put the fucking kibosh on my fucking mental issues as well. Because you remember how fucked up I was after that shit, right?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that personal issue that was going on had like a pretty big effect on everything that was happening with the wrestling. So the combination of me being, like, even though we had a great last show at that Seasons Beatings event, I was still burned out and I needed to... All this other shit had happened with Joe, and Mum was moving out, and so it was like, all right, I need to focus on myself right now.
That's better.
So that's
right.
That's what led to that, and I think because it was such a good show, that kind of redeemed all the bullshit that had happened before, leading up to it. I probably would have been fine with leaving it there until you started floating the idea of finishing it properly later on, which I'm sure we'll get to. But
right
at that time, I was content to leave it because we still had WZWA. I was getting along with everyone again, and the world was right. So I was like, all right, you know, there's circumstances out of my control that are going on here that are stopping us from doing it. You know, I'm not going to be all upset that we have to stop because...
Right.
I can't afford to take that worry on as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's been pretty negative, so I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling
like
the
ICWS section, man. It was.
I'm feeling like you and I are bringing up old heat. I don't want us to have heat.
Yeah, no, but we have to talk about it. We have to get the dialogue out there so everyone knows what went on and how you feel about it now, bro. Don't feel bad. I think this is interesting stuff. So look, obviously, okay, there's no more ICWS. We don't get to complete the storylines and where they were headed at the time. But
Which actually I should actually postscript there. Despite what I'm saying, like, it probably sounds to people like I'm really flippant about ICWS when it came back, like the stuff about the belt in the bin and all of that stuff. My attitude might not have been as hardline passionate as it was in the earlier ICWS, but I did feel like guilty and unhappy that we didn't get to wrap up them storylines because the stuff that was happening with you and Chaos, I felt like that was a really good angle that had heat behind it, and the stuff that Ryan was doing was really good as well. And Chris had really started to find his groove again as well. So I think that there was
Kyle was on fire.
Kyle was on fire. So there was, if I look at it, plenty of good shit going on that it would have been nice to fit, wrap it up. It's not that I didn't care about it. It's just that I didn't have the energy to push for it. Push for getting it all finished. So, yeah.
So as 2016 rolls along and rolls along and rolls along, every now and then I mention to you about a final ICWS show, and I'm talking to Dan Zeppelin about it. And actually, that's something I never really asked you so far, was about how you felt about Dan Zeppelin kind of removing himself from ICWS after Thug Life.
Well, I don't know what he might have said to other people, conversations that I wasn't aware of, but
because I remember just getting him to wrestle on Thug Life was an issue, and he
as
eventually
far as
agreed to it, and it was a great match with Ice.
he continued to attend the shows, and Dan was actually one of the only people that never got really like negative and upset when all that stuff was going down, because he might have chimed in and said and tried to mediate and said, I can see where this person's coming from, but in his conversations with me, he was like one of the only people outside of Chaos that sort of understood where I was coming from and said, bro, I don't think there's actually too much of a problem, because he always wanted to do a real casual backyard wrestling fed where all it was about was just people getting together in a group and doing matches. So he liked what I was doing, because that was what he always wanted to do.
But did it frustrate you that he didn't continue on the actual shows?
Yeah, it did, because he was one of the only connections we had to the old ICWS.
Marquee character from the old ICWS.
He was a big character, and sort of like with the already limited roster that we had, it was one less person that we were going to be able to use when making the cards.
Right.
And him not wrestling was, again, one of those things about how, people complained about my booking, but they never fully got to see what I was doing, because Dan was one of those people that was figured into plans, but because he wasn't doing it, I never got a chance to. Because you just have to change things when people leave. You got to change it and do something else, which can mess up a lot of other stuff, like a butterfly effect.
Yeah.
It's like when you would come to me, even as recently as a few months ago, and go, bro, I've got this problem, so-and-so can't do this. And then I would give you 10 suggestions, and each time, 9 out of 10 of those would be we can't do this because it's going to affect this, and this, and this.
Yeah.
And then the 10th suggestion might be something that you can do, but it would still not be ideal, because
that's why sometimes when people ask or suggest storylines to me over the years, I say to them, it can't happen. It happened a lot with Phoenix, actually, because Phoenix would make these grand suggestions. I'm like, that can't happen, dude, because it affects 5 other people. It can't affect that many people because they've got their own shit to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's, since you say that, that's the last thing I'll mention about the negative side of ICWS for this whole podcast, because we've passed it and everything's good now, is that that is what I was trying to express earlier on when we were talking about it, was that people would come to me with ideas that I would just say no to, and then they would say, oh, how come you're saying no? The booking in this Fed sucks, and blah, 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 you're not listening to us. But from my point of view, it's like, no, you can't do that because I've got this planned and this planned for the next event for this character. Because I had an idea. I didn't necessarily know the specific matches for 6 shows in advance, but I knew that I wanted Kyle to...
You knew what direction you were going.
I knew that I wanted Kyle to eventually win the junior heavyweight title, and I knew that I wanted Ryan to win the heavyweight title.
What about me?
Chaos was gonna put you over for it, and then Ryan was gonna beat you for it.
Oh, was he? I thought Ice was gonna beat me for it.
No, because Ice was out of it.
That's right. He was gone by that point.
So, that's the reason why there was such a.
Because that would have been really difficult. Because I wouldn't put over Ryan.
No, yeah, you would have. You love Ryan.
Yeah, I do.
So,
and I've already put him over.
So yeah, I guess that was the best way to explain it, was that on one hand you got people saying, how come the booking's not better? And then you've got me trying to explain, well, you're not giving me a chance to do, like, show you guys what I'm doing. I've got fun stuff planned for everyone. And then the third side of it was people like Dan, as much as I love him and he was supportive, you know, he didn't want to wrestle anymore, so that throws a spanner in the works.
Your brother leaves, that throws a spanner.
Yeah, the brother leaves, and then some events you don't have Blade.
Deacon's not there.
Some events
Blade's
you don't
not
have,
there.
Deacon. So it was all like a
Jack
rich...
and Antilochus with their shitty attitude towards season's beatings and them not showing up because they couldn't be bothered going all the way there. And
so, you know, it's all... There's fault on all sides, really, if we're talking whose fault all that negative shit was. But the end of the day is, I accept responsibility for my part in the wrongdoings and the negativity of it. I'm not mad at anyone anymore because it all worked out well at the end, and we've topped it off well, and everyone's at peace with it. So
I think in conclusion, what we can take from this experience is that Deacon is a faggot.
That's really what I was going to say as well. I mean, I was trying to sum that up, but like with his fucking carrot-topped head and just... it's like when you know what it's like. The top of his head is like a plate. If you take a carrot and you grate it through the big holes of a cheese grater, you know how some dickheads put that shit on their sandwich, and it overpowers the whole sandwich. His head is like the carrot that overpowers your sandwich.
Right, and Monet is ugly.
And,
excellent.
Well, no, but Monet is like when you order a nice greasy cheeseburger and you find out it's got fucking beetroot in it because you're at some fucking country Australian lunch bar and they've put beetroot in a burger. Like, who the fuck ever orders a burger and says, oh, I'll have some beetroot, mate, that'd be cool. Piss off.
No, fuck them.
So Deacon's the carrot, Monet's the fucking beetroot, or if you burn beetroot...
And Tash is the root.
Tash is the root.
That's sick.
Tash is the root.
That was
in beetroot.
sick, man. You fucking
she's
brown.
Pure.
You brown
She's
cunt.
pure. She's like English cream. English fucking...
She's a hot little bit of crumpet,
she's like
crumpet,
Devonshire
mate.
cream. Yeah, she's
a hot little bit of
nice
crumpet.
little piece of crumpet.
Twister Metal A. Okay, let's get back into seriousness here, DJ.
Fucking faggoty.
So as 2016 is moving along, it's moving along very nicely for WCWA. Not really, but what
do you mean, not really?
Was shit.
Was there problems
the first
going on at that point?
Oh, dude, when we get to the WCWA section, I'll unleash.
All right, All right, we'll go to that.
All right, so 2016. As the year goes on, I pepper in every now and then to you. How about a final ICWS show? How about a final... You know, every time we hung out, I mentioned it. And I would mention to Dan, you know, I guess we can't do it at your house. Blah, blah, blah. I posted in the thread. I really want to do a final ICWS show. I was pretty much, like, pushing for this more than anyone. I know you wanted to do it, but you were like, if it happens... I just want to like be a part of the booking, and like someone else has to organise everything else, which is fair enough.
Which is not quite what ended up happening, but
initially.
But initially.
But thankfully, a lovely man by the name of Vincent Graves, aka Gareth,
and a sexy motherfucker.
He said, "I will have the final ICWS show at my house." I'm like, "Oh my god, thank you." He's like, "I've got a great big backyard. You can do it there. Just give me a date and we'll sort it out." I'm like, "Thank you so much, Gareth." So we didn't have to worry about trying to convince the Zeppelins family to have another show one more time.
Do you know he
Which,
reckons...
you know what, they shouldn't have had to have.
Yeah, they've put in their time. They've put in their time.
Certainly done enough. And so, okay, Gareth has said yes. So I'm talking to Dan, I'm talking to you, and I'm looking at the first ever show, and I notice... March 18th, 2007, the first ever UWF show at the Rose Garden. And I'm like, oh my god, March 18th, 2017 falls on a Saturday. We could have the final ICWS show 10 years to the day. And as soon as I said that to you, to Dan, to Chris Zeppelin, they were like, oh my god, That's perfect.
I heard it.
Everyone was on board immediately.
I was already, because, like, from the beginning, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it, and you and me can book it, and it'll be sick. And then, like, when you told me that it was going to be 10 years to the day, I was just
can you believe that shit?
I, like, creamed in my jocks.
You can't write that
like,
shit. It
yeah,
just happened.
It was so fucking perfect.
Because when we thought about it, when we were discussing it, first we thought it'd be a month away, 2 months away.
Well, like, it's going to be in the realm. We can say that it's 10 years.
But then we realised, in 5 months' time, that's the 10-year anniversary to the first show, so let's wait and let's do it then.
And then it's like, like...
Fucking pure.
To the day.
You know what?
Pure.
It's very pure.
I would describe it as, extremely pure.
It is the definition of pure. So...
I'm laughing because of how many variations there are
many.
Of us
there's
trying
about,
to
there's
make...
about 15. And every time you say one, I say, no.
It's the like, and just how, like, serious we are. It's like, this is the fine point, the pinnacle of pure. Like,
we're going through it with a fine-tooth comb. This is just a little bit
like,
of this right here. This is the part of the pure that it's at.
It's almost too pure.
It's like Tasha's vagina.
It's almost so pure that it needs to be violated.
Like Tasha's vagina. So look, we've got a date set. Okay. What are you thinking once I've gone to all these lengths to secure a location? What is it that you're thinking? Okay, what card can we do? Blah, blah, blah. How are you thinking about initially?
Well, I mean, you were around for most of the booking, but immediately the first thing I thought was I wanted to do...
I think we wanted to put you against Ice, didn't we? Initially?
Yeah, but the first thing that I thought was I wanted to do Vincent Graves versus Ryan Tate for the junior heavyweight title and actually have Vincent win the junior title, because that was Vincent's first match in ICWS on the base, and it made sort of sense for him to have his last match against Ryan Tate, and he would finally win a title as well, because I didn't know if he was going to win anything in WCWA by that point. So
I think you and I both agreed at that point that's a great thing.
Yeah, so he needed to win that. And the second thing I thought was, as you said, by that point, by the time that we had gotten around to doing this final show, it was like, okay... I
think we're about a month out and we finally finalised the card kind of thing.
Yeah. No, but even before that, though, when we were just talking about it, like...
We should do this
I said return to wrestling by that point, and I was like, well, I never wrestled Ice in ICWS. And I remember wrestling him... Like, because I've lost weight, like, since the last time I wrestled Ice. When I wrestled Ice the first time, I was at my biggest. I weighed 100 kilos. Now I weigh about 87, 86. So I was like, all right, I want to have a match with him now that I'm fitter.
You weigh less than me, you skinny cunt. What's your secret?
Hey? I just don't...
Just whacking off so much.
No, I just don't eat...
So much cum has left your system that you're that...
Nah, man. It's like I just try and go for a walk. Honestly, I just try and go for a walk every day. Like a half-an-hour walk. And just don't snack too much during the day.
Right, so anyway, back to us.
So, So I was like, all right, now that I'm feeling fitter and healthier, and he's fitter and healthier, and he'd begun making improvements in his life, which I'm happy to say he's continued to do, and I'm happy for him. I was like, we're both in a better place since the last time we wrestled. I want to wrestle Ice again. That'll be sick. He's one of my best friends, still is. Like, I want to have my last match against him. And that fit, because I knew straight away that I didn't want to put Chaos against Ice. Because it's like...
It's been done to death.
It's been done to death. And I thought, this way it frees up other people to do other things. And I think it would be a good match for both me and Ice, because it wasn't going to be... Ice wasn't going to have to try and kill himself to get the match over. And I really wanted to wrestle him again because he's heaps talented. So that was the thinking behind that. Unfortunately, Ice ended up getting injured and having to retire from WZWA, which put the kibosh on that match. And then I believe, even a week before he unfortunately had to retire, I think he told me that he would have the wedding to go to.
He was a good... he had a Bucks party to go to.
The Bucks party to go to
yeah.
On that day. So we couldn't, unfortunately, do it. And then as far as like initial thoughts on what the card was going to be, I knew that I wanted to do Chris versus Jacob because Chris requested that match. And
That's right, yeah.
I've never seen him have a bad...
That was one of the first matches that were...
That was straight up because like it was like they wanted it and we wanted it too because we knew it would be sick. And it was on the day.
And another match we wanted was Circus Royale versus the Carnage Crew.
Yep.
New
That's an interesting thing. I'll talk about that now. So I was in touch with Nick from November of 2016 on him about this is the date that it's going to be.
Plenty of events notice.
It's 10 years to the day. I'll pay for you to get down here. All you got to do is come down. It's an easy match. You've wrestled Kyle before. Deacon's even lighter in the ring than Kyle is.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's a tag match, so if you get gassed or if you don't feel like doing too much, all you got to do is tag out and Dan can take over. All you got to do is come in, do your signature moves, and fucking do the finish, and then get on the piss with us.
Yeah.
And stay at Gareth's and chill out. And he was like, yeah, man, I'm keen. And I continued to say this all the way leading up, and everything was looking good. And then, unfortunately, right around that time, like, by that time, he had the baby, and they had the new baby to deal with. But that still wouldn't have gotten in the way. At this point, it was still looking like he could come down, and he was really keen on doing it.
Yeah.
And then what happened, though, was that the lease on his place ran out, and he was going to have to move. And unfortunately, the time for them to, like, physically do the move, like, move the furniture and stuff, and clean out the house for the new tenants, happened on, like, the weekend before ICWS.
Right,
so then it was like, all right, you know, Carl's going to be pissed off, but this is really... Because I'm more understanding, I knew the situation. Nick had to work 5 days a week, and Caitlin was looking after the baby full time. So there's a bit, and like my dad was going to come down, but he was working 6 days a week, so he could only come down one day that weekend. And it was like, all right, it'll be like a real pleasant surprise if they manage to get all of that shit done in the time that they've got. So then it was like, all right, like Nick said, if the move and the cleaning of the old place is done in time, I'll come down because I'm still really keen. I want to come out and hang out, and it's the last one. Like, he was excited because he ended up messaging you afterwards. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out, and it sucked. But
we always had the plan B in place.
And I remember feeling bad for Dan, but then after I found out how excited he was to actually do the match with me as his partner, which meant a lot, you know, because every now and again, like, Dan's not that talkative and we don't see each other, like, all the time. But, like, you know, he's one of my best friends too. Like, we're actually really close. And every now and again we have, like, these really sweet moments. Like, one of them was when I fucking... I can't remember what I posted. Like, I fucking posted something about memories that I had with the friends or whatever, and then, like, the one person that messaged me was Dan going, like, oh, bro, I miss you, man. We got to hang out and shit. And I remember being really, like, taken aback by that, because Dan never really talks like that. But he, like, it was like a heartfelt thing where he was like, man, we need to hang out soon, you know? And then a few years after that was this moment at ICWS where we just kind of had a little chat, and he just said that he was, like, hell chuffed to be, like, doing the final match with me as his partner, and that we were going to be the final tag team champs. And yeah, like, just how much it meant to him to be doing it. Like, not just from the wrestler perspective, but as friends as well. And that meant a lot to me as well, and that made it really special.
And we didn't know that this was going to be a tag team until the day before.
Yeah, and we really didn't even
confirmation that Nick wasn't
coming.
So
I was sitting there thinking that this was going to be some bullshit plan B, but it ended up being like actually a really special moment, like for me at least. I don't know how Dan felt, but yeah, it was a special moment between friends.
Yeah. So let's get the scale back again.
Yeah.
We told the Nick story now. We haven't really got to the tag match itself, but let's scale back.
We still got kind of the other elements of the... I know that you want to go through your big thing about how the title match got planned.
I do.
And I'm going to let you handle most of that, even though it's my podcast. But because we've already talked about it like 3 times on a podcast, and I you know, like you can field it. Well, but what I will say first is that I'll just quickly recap like some other matches on the card. So once
I want to talk about us having to drag that fucking base there.
Then alright, but we can do that. We'll do the card first. Hey? Right. Like, why not?
If you want.
Because we're in that mode. Fine. I feel like we'll be
Fine.
jumping around too much.
Well, we are because of you. I'd like to keep it in timeline, but you keep on jumping forward.
All right. No, but first we're talking about, you asked me about what was we thinking before the event, and now you want to jump to the event before we've talked about all the matches.
I want to talk about how we got to the last event and how we
So now I'm about to talk about how the multi-man match came about and shit like that, and then how I ended up...
Go.
So first of all, once I found out Ice wasn't going to be able to wrestle, I thought to myself, fuck, I'll wrestle Phoenix, and then we can add another special little thing onto the show and have someone do his debut ICWS at the final one, and that means that Phoenix will have now wrestled for ICWS in addition to the other feds.
Yeah.
And I wanted to test myself, because Phoenix, as we know, is fucking out there, and his ideas and everything like that, and I wanted to see, like, can he pull off a good match with someone of my limitations, and can I rise to the occasion of wrestling him?
Gotcha.
So that's how that happened. I'll talk about it later. The multi-man match. It was planned to be Vincent Graves versus Ryan Tate. I think Jack definitely and Monnet maybe expressed that they wanted to be against each other at the final ICWS show. And you and me said no. And the reason that we said no, even though it annoyed them, was because A, they were probably going to be against each other at the final WZWA show.
Bingo.
And B, we've already seen like, especially in Monnet's case, that's another wrestler that could really give somebody else a great match, that could give us more latitude in making the card.
Plus, we'd seen Ryan versus Vincent once.
We've seen it.
Extra element to it.
So it ended up that we weren't going to have that many options left, because we knew that we wanted to do Chris versus Antilochus. We eventually decided what the main event was going to be. We knew that we didn't have Ice. We knew that Dan was going to be busy in the tag match, and we didn't want to do a singles between Jack and Monnet. So we were kind of ended up... It just kept coming back to, like, Jack and Monnet, we didn't want them against each other, but they were in consideration for kind of like the young gun, fast-paced match of the card. And whatever combinations that we tried to do, it kept coming back to the Vincent and Ryan match. Like, we didn't have anywhere else to go with it, so it was like they kind of got melded together.
Right.
So then we sort of combined the idea of doing the fast-paced mid-card match with the junior heavyweight title match, and put them into a 4-way, and that's how that ended up being.
So now, I remember we had discussed maybe popping Steel in there, maybe popping Brandon
Steel in there,
but then we just decided to take them out
and
put Luke and Jack in.
Yeah, and I don't remember... I think the reason why we didn't put Steel... We couldn't put Steel against Jack, because we knew what would happen.
We know how that would go.
We couldn't put Steel in the junior heavyweight title match because Gareth probably wasn't going to be experienced enough to, like, get Steel through that match. And if we did Graves versus Steel on their own and did Ryan versus Monnet for the junior heavyweight title with Ryan retaining...
We wouldn't get Vincent Graves winning the belt, so...
And it would also be something that we've seen before, so that possibility was eliminated there.
Done, yeah.
So then it was like... We found out that Ace was going to be able to show up and fucking...
Well, Ace was... It was a blessing that he was there because Blade couldn't make the show because of his job moving locations, so he had to move on the day, move his office to another office. So luckily Ace was there, and I said to him, would you be able to wrestle Steel today so you can help fill in?
And that's like... I think that's pretty much all of the matches except the main event now that we've covered. But
and the only thing was me and Aries. Just Aries was replacing Brian Lowe.
Fuck yeah! See, that's the one I was thinking just a second ago. Like, was Aries on the show? I swear I remember him being on the show.
Because he had to replace Lowe because Lowe didn't think he'd be able to do ICWS and the final WCWA show. It had to be one or the other. So I just said, don't worry about the ICWS show, Lowe. Don't worry about it at all. I'll just wrestle someone else, and then I picked Aries because we never had a chance to have a good match.
We never had a singles match, and that was 3 people that we got to debut on ICWS on the final show, which is really the spirit of what ICWS was all about, bringing in new guys.
And
the other thing,
a chance to debut.
You know, the way that those 2 matches, Steel and Ace and Aries and yourself, worked out, they both turned out to be great matches. And that also, it just encapsulated the spirit of ICWS, like make and do with what you have, and pleasantly, like, pulling out these rabbits out of a hat and having these great matches that no one saw coming and no one even knew that until the day that was what was going to happen.
Right.
We knew we wanted to get Dante Daniels involved, and it was
because he showed up on the day.
Yep.
He showed up.
We knew.
I said to him, "Do you want to do this thing? I've got an idea of this segment where Knuckles can finally get his revenge on you."
And that was one thing. That was actually one thing where we did disagree on. It wasn't like an angry disagreement, but it was like, because you wanted him to do the little segment, and I was like, no, because I thought that we had this mythical main event planned, and wouldn't it be great if you just had these 2 titans? And I didn't think that Nem should get involved physically in the show until it was time to lock up with Chaos.
But I was adamant.
But you were adamant, and I agreed to it, and I'm glad that I agreed to it because it turned out to be the right thing to do. And Dante, it was like he never even missed a step.
How good was he?
He cut a fucking sick promo, and then he put over Nem heaps good.
So naturally talented.
And now, I guess that leads us to the main event. And obviously, you had this idea that was kind of poetic for the main event, and it was in line with the 10 years to the day thing. So the stars would have aligned to do this main event. I was initially against it because I didn't think that either person involved would have wanted that match. But I said to you from the outset, if you can get them involved, like, get them on board to do it. Like, because I liked the concept. I liked the idea of, like, the first champion being in the final championship match against the long-reigning, defending monster heel that's never been beaten.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was going to come out of retirement to do it, and it was a match that had never happened before, and it was going to be the main event, like a main event that no one would have expected because
as we were going over the ideas for the card, we couldn't think of who would wrestle Chaos.
Because there was no one that we thought. So, like, I was always on board with the idea of it from the beginning, but I really didn't think that Nem would want to do it because he had told me over and over again, like, I'm done with wrestling. You know, like, I'm sick of it. It's too much for me. I'm done with it. And then I was also like, Chaos shouldn't have to potentially not have a great match by having to carry a person who hasn't wrestled in ages and isn't the best technical wrestler to begin with. Like, I was also adamant that we should give Chaos an opponent who can give him, like, a balls to the wall match. But also, simultaneously to that, it kept on coming up that, well, we couldn't put Ryan in against Chaos because we needed Ryan for other shit.
We needed to take the belt from him.
We couldn't put Chris against Chaos because they always have great matches, and it would have been a fine match.
But it wouldn't make sense for Chris to be in the final ICWS match.
But it would make
that stuff
sense.
Would always come back to it, wouldn't it?
Like we kept
he
on
can't be in the final
like
ICWS
we explored,
match.
And that was really the whole booking thing. Even if it wasn't us two arguing about shit, it was always like we would come up with these ideas and maybe even get excited about doing them, and then it would be, here's the roadblock. So nothing was coming back.
Because even if we said me versus Chaos, I'd be like, I'm not going to be in the final ICWS match. It's not my spot to be in.
It just was, and it was like, then the thing even came up with me being in the final match.
And I even said maybe you. And you
like,
were like, no.
You pushed for it, and I said no, because I felt like I've never really been a main event guy. I especially wasn't a main event guy in ICWS, and I didn't want to. I just kind of thought it would be like a good little poetic
that's where
thing.
Knuckles came into it. It was
for me
like,
to
this
do
is the only person that I can possibly think
Yeah.
of that
So
would
then
make
it's-
this special, because it's someone that hasn't wrestled in years, and it would make it special.
So then it's like, all right, it's a sick idea, it's a sick concept. It makes me cream my jocks as far as the stars aligning and it being perfect. But I don't think that they would want to do it. And I think if, even if they did agree, but it was reluctantly, if it was reluctantly so, it would be probably a bad match, and we can't have a bad match finish the show. But I said, if you can get them to be interested in it and sign off on doing it, that's the main event.
Right.
And then, yeah, I guess you can tell the story because you orchestrated it really more than me. All I did was half-heartedly say, me and Carl would really like it if you did this if you could do this final match, and I know that you're probably not keen, but it would be hell sick if you could do it. And then he was like, nah, I don't really want to do it. And I was like, well, that's what I thought. Because I didn't really sell him on it, because I thought there was no way that he would say yes.
Because I knew that if it was sold appropriately, everything would change, and he would change his mind.
Because I thought that I knew
Chaos wasn't sold initially, and I sat with him right here. He was in the seat that you're in right now, and I sold it to him. I was like, this is why this match should happen. This is why it makes sense.
I can
and
picture
at the end of it, Chaos was so keen.
I can picture Chaos's blue eyes lighting up once he finally understood what
Once
you
he
were
saw
going
the
for.
light, and
I
everything that was
can
black
picture-
and white now becomes color.
I can picture that big smile coming across his face and him going woof, and just his face lighting up, and the moment where before he even says anything that he's on board.
So here's the pitch that I gave Nem. Nem, I know you already said no to DJ, but just listen up. 10 years to the day of the first ever UWF event where you won the championship. The legend comes out of retirement after 3 years of being out of the game, and he's like in a Rocky Balboa story, and he's going to go after the championship one more time against the undefeated champion. It's Spear versus Gore. It's Knuckles Lock versus the Chokeout. It is the first ever champion against the last champion. Who's going to go out with the belt? This is a perfect story. What do you think, bro? Just think about it. You haven't done it for a while, but I promise you, me and DJ will help you and Chaos through this. Let's make the final match, the final moment in ICWS history being the most meaningful, because the whole idea of the last show is for the ICWS originals to reclaim their federation, because this is about them, not about us. So we have Vinny G win the junior heavyweight title. We have, it was going to be the Carnage crew winning the tag titles, but it ended up being you and Dan. Either way, you know what? I'm fucking happy that it happened that way. And then we have Knuckles win the heavyweight championship 10 years to the day of the first show. Fuck yes.
And then once you gave him that pitch,
And then was like, let me think about it. And then your Hall of Fame night. With Chris and Dan. I spoke to him in the Z Arena itself. I was out there and I spoke to him in the backyard and I said, hey man, have you thought about it? And he looked at me and he said, you know what man, I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
and I was like, bro, yes.
And then when you said,
this is going to be great.
And then when you came back to me and said that they agreed to do it, because you had the idea for a while that I secretly didn't want to do it. And I was trying to convince you that I did want to do it, but I wanted what was best for the show and for the guys to come first. I was like, I don't want either Chaos or Knuckles to do something that they don't really want to do. And
right.
But when I found out they were keen on it, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is gonna be sick.
Right.
It's gonna be awesome.
Right. So they're both on board now. They're both keen. It's worked out perfectly at this stage.
The rest of the card's been booked.
It has been booked. We're all set to go. But, God, we need to get a base from Bassendean to Bassendean. But it feels like it's a lot fucking further away, that's for sure. You and I have to get your dad's trailer and dragged that fucking base from Dan's house to Gareth's house. It took all day.
Lot of heavy lifting.
Some of those pieces were too big for the fucking trailer.
And somehow...
And we did it. We managed to do it.
Somehow we channeled the Australian spirit of winging it. The Aussie spirit of just winging it and doing what we could. And the yachting spirit of just fucking putting out fires and trying to do what we can. And we managed to lug that big fucker over to Gareth's house.
It took 3 trips, and the last
3
bit of my
trips,
petrol, and I had no
and
more money.
The sun's in our fucking eyes, and you're having to try to back that fucking trailer in and out, and fucking...
And I've never backed a trailer into anywhere. I don't know how to reverse whilst having a trailer hooked to my car. So me and DJ have to keep fucking unhooking the trailer and putting
hooking
it
it
onto
back
the road,
in,
and then hooking it back on
and
every fucking time.
And each time
that's
that
6 times
and
that we had
each
to do it.
yes, and each time that we did do the hooking and unhooking procedure, that alone took its own toll and time that we had to spend doing it. But each time that we did that was preceded by a lengthy discussion of how we can avoid doing that, and how we can, and then attempting several times to like back it in or back it up or put it in there without having to take the trailer off. So even though we'd already been forced to come to the conclusion once or twice that we're going to have to unhook the trailer and put it back on, every single time we got to a new location or the next part of the trip, we still were trying to avoid unhooking the trailer and putting it back on the next time. And so it was like this process of each separate leg of the process. We were going through the same procedure of, oh fuck, how can we do it? And going through all these discussions and fucking around and getting annoyed and then going, fuck, I need a cigarette. And the whole thing was just a fucking nightmare.
And no one understands, and
no one
will
understands.
Appreciate what we had to go through that day. DJ was holding 2 tires walking down Dan Zeppelin's driveway and fell over because if he's trying to lift these 2 fucking heavy tires at the same time, and he fucking face planted on the driveway. Like, we were hurting ourselves on the tires. We were trying to
the
fucking
fucking tires were dirty.
Trailer.
They're filled with stagnant water and bugs.
Think about it. That water's been there for fucking 2 years.
The fucking planks are giving us splinters. It's all fucking rotten wood. Jesus. And we thought that after we got through that day, Carl... Oh, yeah. And by the way, right? Literally the day before that... So, 2 days before...
Yes.
We were due to do this whole process. Carl came to me and said, what are we doing about the base? And I immediately was annoyed because I'd been waiting for this for the next 6 months, where I said from the beginning that I didn't want to do anything about organizing the base. And then it ended up coming back to me anyway. But I quickly... what's the best way to say? I quickly realized that if I didn't help Carl, he would have no one else to help him do it. Because we kind of, when we conceived the idea of coming back for the return show, and Carl said, all right, bro, you don't have to organize the base or anything. All you got to do is book. Both of us were probably thinking in our minds, and I'm sure that Carl will answer in a sec. We were both probably thinking in our minds that it would be Carl and then he would have the help of Ice or somebody else. But the way that it worked out is that we weren't going to have access to my dad's ute. We weren't going to have access to anyone else that had a ute or a trailer. Mm-hmm. And we didn't actually have the help of Ice or Chaos or anyone else that was good with that kind of thing like we anticipated.
But luckily I had a tow ball.
Thank God he had a tow ball. And I didn't
even know I had one until we had to do it.
I had a trailer.
I actually have one. Yeah.
So it came down to the fact. It came down to it was going to be me and Carl, and I knew from the beginning of the day that this was going to be fucked because Carl didn't actually realize what went into the base. That's what I was trying to.
I didn't realize how many pieces there were and how long they. You know what? I knew how many pieces there were. I just didn't know how long they were.
How heavy and cumbersome and awkward it was. So. So I must have said to Carl several times throughout that day, now you know what was upsetting me so much when ICWS had its comeback. Because he used to say, like, oh, you know, like, fucking, he used to kind of not really understand why it would stress me out so much. But then I was like, here, bro, you see now? Can you see? And he'd be like, yeah, man, I understand.
Exactly.
So then, 2 days before it comes time to do this job, I say to my dad, Dad, I need the fucking trailer because we're going to be moving the ring. And he said, yeah, just don't expect my help. So that immediately crossed out the possibility in the back of my mind that we might be able to use his ute, because neither of us can drive a manual car because we're women. And
what, me?
Can you drive a manual?
Yeah.
So you could have driven the ute, but
I wouldn't have wanted to because I've never driven a big vehicle like that,
right.
Except for when I worked at DHL. It's a shit job. It's a shit job. Keep going, DJ.
So that was out of the question, and literally 24 hours before it came time to move the stuff for the base.
Yeah.
I was becoming concerned because I got up one day and I saw that the trailer wasn't out on my front lawn where it normally is. And I thought, all right, Dad might have taken it to work. End of that day comes and Dad's ute pulls in and the trailer's not connected to it. So now I'm like, fuck, the one time that I actually give a shit what's happening with the trailer and it's not here.
Right.
So I say to Dad, casually at first, like, what's happening with the trailer, Dad? And he immediately says, oh, it's at your Uncle Rick's getting painted. He's doing it with me for free because I patched up some ceilings at his house. So I'm thinking, like, fuck, you know, because right then I'm about to ask him, tell him I need the trailer to move the ring. So I say, oh, cool. Well, do you know when it's going to be back? And he's like, why? With his usual charm. And I say, well, because me and Carl are going to go and pick up the ring from the Zeppelins and drag it to Gareth's because we're doing another show. He said, all right, just don't get a single fucking scratch on that trailer. Trailer comes back, and after years of being a rusted, broken down hunk of shit, it's now this pristine trailer.
Pristine,
it's been
like
fixed.
Tasha's pussy.
Exactly. The dents have been bashed out of it. It's been reprimed.
I'd like to bash out the dents in her vagina.
Man, that's sick, man. That's fucking
Fuck
pure.
yeah. Fuck you, Luke, you fucking brown cunt. Continue.
Beetroot. So now we've got this pristine trailer and we're lugging around these fucking long-ass awkward boards.
Like
and
Tash would lug around my long-ass dick.
And these dirty fucking tires and these planks of wood with fucking sharp screws sticking out of them. And we got to lug all this shit.
so many sharp screws.
And we got to lug all this shit around and put it into my dad's new trailer, which we don't have any drop sheets for.
A lot of shit doesn't fit in there either.
And we're trying not to fucking just put a giant gash into the new paint of this trailer. So that's another constant running theme.
I like to put Tash into the trailer.
Throughout
that doesn't
the day.
even make sense.
Throughout the day, that's another constant thing.
Fuck you, Blade, if you're listening. Continue.
Cunt. Is me saying constantly, let's not scratch the trailer, and then Gareth or you going, fuck dude, we're not going to scratch it, it'll be fine, it'll come right out. And me having to go, oh shit, and trying to rub it out and making sure that it would come out. So
spitting on your hand and rubbing it.
spitting on my hand and rubbing it out, and just like I spit on my hand and rub one out over Tash. So, you know, I like that we were on the same page there.
I knew where you're going.
Fuck you, Monet. Gay cunt.
Brow.
Yeah, and then so after this huge, annoying fucking process is finally completed, I say to Carl, oh man, maybe we should hang out for a beer later on. And he says, yeah man, maybe, I'll see. But I think both of us, when we sat there in my driveway, we knew that we weren't going to be seeing each other again for the rest of that day. Because we knew in our heart of hearts...
and I wasn't drinking at the time, so...
we knew in our heart of hearts that we'd had enough. We were burned out. And we thought that was the end of our struggle. But then the day of the show actually came, and we realized we would have to put the thing together and set it up.
Well, before we get to that, DJ, let's get away from talking about the base, because this story has gone about 20 minutes long, I'd say.
Do you think it's going to be interesting at all?
It is. I think it is, yeah. So you wake up and you know that morning this is the day of the final ICWS show. How are you feeling?
You know what, man? I've
10 years.
honestly not been more excited or happy about a show, maybe ever. Everything about the booking of that show was immaculate. I knew that even if some of the matches weren't as good as we envisioned they could be, they were still going to be awesome. I knew that we were all going to have a massive party and a piss up at Gareth's, because it's fun hanging out at Gareth's place, and I knew it was going to be a great atmosphere for a show.
Right.
I knew we already had the base organised and we weren't going to have to fuck around with that. I knew we were going to have twice as many people there to help put the thing together than we did last time we had an ICWS show, and I knew people would be more enthusiastic about picking up and lending a hand to help out because it was going to be the last show. And I was so excited that I was going to get to see Nem, one of my best friends in the world, wrestle another one of my best friends in the world in the final match of this Fed that me and my friends had created 10 years ago, that we'd started 10 years to the day.
Yeah.
So there was so much going on. I was excited that I was going to team up with another one of my best friends, Dan, and finally win another title in ICWS, 9 years after I'd last won a title.
Right.
In the Fed. I was excited that we were going to have one or two people making their first appearance on the final show. Just everything about it. I didn't feel stressed. I didn't feel anxious. I didn't even really get that emotional and upset. I never really, even during the emotional parts of the show, I got emotional and reflective about everything that was going on. But I was so overwhelmed with happiness. It was like the perfect... Straight away, as soon as I opened my eyes, I knew it was going to be like the perfect day. I had all my stuff prepared the night before, like I do for every show. I had a fresh fucking pouch of tobacco ready to go. I had a can of Mother in the fridge waiting for me.
12 non-alcoholic beers.
I already had a carton waiting at Gareth's of beer for me to drink. Everything was prepared, and I knew it was going to be perfect. Then people started showing up, and I was starting to get annoyed because I was like, fuck, this bass is so annoying. But I was like, all right, it's going to be the last time we ever have to do it. Yeah. So when there was only a few people there, I started walking onto the lawn, and Gareth was chatting to me at the time, and I knew he would follow me over if I started going on there. So we started putting together the floor. And then a couple of other people show up and start helping to put it together. Then eventually it was everyone was like, fuck it, and we got down and dirty, and we managed to set the fucking thing up. But then
a bunch of people decided, we need to get food.
Then a bunch of people decided we needed to get food.
No one can eat their fucking breakfast before they come.
So we get the thing set up. We have the whole thing where some of the padding was actually missing, and everyone was questioning, is this going to be good enough to wrestle on? Luckily, it turned out that it was fine and that there was nothing amiss.
Completely fine.
So once the thing is set up, sorry to interrupt there, Carl. Yeah, some cunts decided, we need to get food and shit like that.
Right.
Wouldn't be a yachting show without some shit like that going on. So they go off to get their food, delaying the start of the show. Dante Daniels shows up. Phoenix shows up. I'm getting excited because everyone's here.
I can't believe Dante's there. I mean, I'm just stoked that he's there.
And the atmosphere's going great, and it's all fucking...
We're having a good chat with one another. We're having a good time.
At the time, I had been dating my new girlfriend for a while, so I was like, fuck yeah, I'm going to get drunk, and then the next day I'm going to go and get a piece of pussy. It was sick. So,
Too bad the girlfriend wasn't Tash, bro.
Yeah, too bad, Too bad it wasn't a pure piece of dime ass pussy, like Tash.
Right.
Natasha Green.
Yeah.
Is who we're talking about.
Find her on Facebook, everyone.
Yeah, she's sexy. She's a sexy piece of crumpet.
Sexy little bit of crumpet.
Crumpet tits. So, I was gonna say cunt pit, but I thought better of it. So fucking the show starts. The first match on the card is the classic favourite, Steel Kemsley versus the debuting Big Ace. And Big Ace had been on fire for the last several months.
Fire, bro.
On fucking fire. So it was like, sick. We're starting off with a great fucking match, and it's awesome to see Big Ace is going to wrestle in ICWS at least once, and on the base. So he goes out there, he has a great match with Steel, and Steel could do no wrong by this point as well. And they have a great fucking match. Steel does his classic ICWS shit, man. Gets the crap kicked out of him, takes some wicked bumps. Like, Ace is looking good, he's moving great. Like, what a fucking match. Just starts everything off with a bang. Everyone's keen, even the people that had never, like Dante's sitting there watching it, he's loving it. People are already starting to crack open a few beers. It's sick. So, what a way to start it off. Then, I believe, was then when we had the Dante segment after that match?
I believe so.
So, Dante comes out. He's looking fresh. He's a good-looking guy, as everyone who's seen him knows. You got to have him on the podcast, by the way.
Oh, I'd love to.
So he comes out, it's like he's never missed a beat, even though he hasn't done anything in yarding or remotely close to wrestling for 5 years. He walks out as if he's been playing the character every single day and just cuts a hellsick promo.
Well, let's be honest, the guy's probably only had about fucking 7 matches in his career, and he's been there here and there,
throughout all different eras of ICWS.
And then all of a sudden, after all this time,
he picks up cutting his promo on Knuckles,
fucking boom,
who he's been feuding with since 2011. So that's 6 years, as if the last time they'd interacted was the day before. Cuts a hellsick promo. Everyone's loving it. Nem makes a sneak-up appearance. Knuckles lock on Dante Daniels. Dante sells the Knuckles lock. Sick.
We finally fucking tie off that storyline that I've been trying to do for fucking the last 2 Battlefield Brawl matches. I wanted to have Nem and fucking Dante enter a Battlefield Brawl match where fucking Nem finally gets his revenge and eliminates Dante. It never happened, and then we fucking got them at the final show to do something.
6 years in the making, we finally tie it off.
Oh, God,
everyone watches Nem hit the Knuckles lock.
And he locks it in, and he looks at everyone in the eyes.
Which I feel got everybody primed for the main event. And also, we're jumping a bit ahead of ourselves. Chris Zeppelin opened the show and did an intro.
Like the old school way that we did
it. Just like the old school way. He came out, ladies and gentlemen, hit. Everyone's like, fuck yeah. Chris Zeppelin came out, he opened the show. You could tell he was having fun because he was looser and he wasn't having to stress about filming or editing or anything. All he had to do was go out there and speak from the heart and introduce the show. He did a great job and then went and sat down and started charging beers to watch the rest of the show.
Enjoyed himself, man.
So then, after we have the Dante appearance, then we went to myself versus Phoenix.
2 out of 3 falls, baby.
2 out of 3 falls. And we'd planned the stuff, and I'd managed to rein in Phoenix's grandiose plans and stuff like that. But I was at the point where I knew the match was going to be cool. So Phoenix comes out. First thing I do is just fucking smack him as hard as I can, knock him out like after a surprise fucking cheap shot, and pin him. Everyone seemed a bit confused because I think we forgot to remind people that it was 2 out of 3 falls. But they got the idea because we kept on wrestling.
Right.
So that happened. That was Phoenix's idea. Then we kind of went back and forth for a bit. We did I got knocked to the outside and he did the 6 wonton onto me on the outside. And then I gave him the flapjack into the fucking clothesline that was set up. An actual physical clothesline I'm talking about. So that was cool. We did the second fall where he made me tap out with the rear naked choke. The crowd's popping for the stuff that we're doing. I'm having fun. I'm feeling really loose. The adrenaline's pumping. I'm feeling like everyone's enjoying it, that's really what I gauge my enjoyment of a match out of, is how much is everyone else enjoying it. We do the third fall. I pick up the win. It was great to cross Phoenix off my list because he was one of the last people that I hadn't wrestled
yet.
There
weren't that many left.
Outside of Alex, which I knew I was going to wrestle him at the next WZWA. So it was a lot of fun. Phoenix said that he had a lot of fun and he enjoyed the rest of the day as well.
Unfortunately, he had to leave.
He unfortunately had to leave, but up until that point, though, he really enjoyed himself and he really enjoyed the match too. So, and I felt good that, I didn't have a stinker of a match because I'd never wrestled Phoenix before, and I was a little bit reticent about how good is this going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I already was starting to feel even better about an already awesome day by that point.
And then we get to the four-way.
Then the four-way happens, and this is where I think I remember saying to you, maybe like giving you a couple of glances in your direction and saying a couple of comments to you of like, oof, because of one person, Jack Wallace. Why am I bringing up Jack's name right about now, Carl? I feel like I've been talking for a long time. I feel like everyone's sick of my voice. Let's have you jump in a bit.
Jack was in the match. Continue.
Fucking hell. All right, fine. So Jack's in the match, but he's not happy that he didn't get to wrestle Monat in his final ICWS match, despite the fact that he's already getting the fucking match at Resolution. So if you're going to do the match twice for both Feds' final show, how is either one of them going to be as special?
Right.
And it's also like, now you get a chance to do over the ICWS match if it's not, and maybe phone it in a little bit, like before Resolution.
Tasha's bumhole, continue.
So the four-way happens, and it's a bit off the rails, and Carl and I are becoming concerned that maybe it's going to be a bit of a clusterfuck. But luckily, it turns into one of those clusterfucks that's enjoyable to watch. Like, the stars just aligned. The atmosphere was there. Right when you thought there might be a lull in the action, someone else would come in. Bam! A big boot from Vincent Graves. Bam! A sick move from Monat. Ryan coming in with a sick strike or a throw.
Right.
And then the other little thread of black comedy throughout that match was that it was clear through his body language and his interactions with his opponents that Jack didn't really want to fucking bump. Like, he was the only one, and I love you, Jack, but this is what happened, and admit it. He'd been up all night the night before on pingers or some shit, and he was not keen on bumping on the bass. So the other three people in the match made it a point of deliberately going after him, and Jack ended up taking the most bumps out of everybody.
Forced to.
Now, I have been having a joke at his expense, but Jack did get a mild concussion in the match, unfortunately, and glad he was alright. But that hell-sick springboard leg drop that Monat delivered to Jack actually gave Jack a bit of a concussion. If you watch back the footage, you can see that Monat lands really fucking hard, right on Jack's temple.
Right.
So that happened, but Monat and Jack end up getting eliminated. Ryan is just on fucking fire. I'm pretty sure he eliminated the other two from the match.
I believe Gareth eliminated them.
Oh, right. Gareth eliminated the other two, with Ryan being the wily veteran waiting for him to do the dirty work, and then he was going to try and then, after we already had that really fun, crazy, stuff that was going on, and Gareth got rid of them, then the smoke clears, and we'd made it an elimination four-way on purpose, so we'd still get the singles match between Gareth and Ryan.
Bingo.
Boom. Then they, surprisingly, end up having this fucking
war.
This war that starts off with all this chain wrestling where they're countering submissions and trying to do different roll-ups and stuff to each other. And we're like, what the fuck? Because no one expected any of that shit. And then that is interspersed with all this fucking hard-hitting action. And so by the time Ryan finally takes the pin and Gareth wins the title, you're just like, I don't even give a fuck who wins the match. I could have watched these two wrestle all day.
Right.
What an amazing final performance for both of these guys. And Monat did fantastic as always, keeping the match, flowing and keeping the energy in there until he was eliminated. And even though he was hesitant about getting involved, Jack ended up pulling his weight and doing quite good, he kind of was the comic relief of the match. But he played his part. He did his 25% of the effort out of the four guys. So,
and good to see Vincent Graves win his first ever championship in backyard wrestling. After that, we had Antilicus and Rex Regan.
I mean, this will probably be not as long-winded as the other discussions were, because really, that not much needs to be said. You know, these two they've been great friends. They had a history in ICWS by they were one of the earliest WZWA matches to happen in an ICWS arena. They had a tag team going in ICWS that both of them really enjoyed doing, and that was a lot of fun to watch. And they requested that they got to wrestle their last ICWS match against each other because they wrestled their first one against each other. And this match was just as good as any other match they've ever had, but plus they had the years of experience that they'd accumulated in between since that first
Instant
ICW
classic
match. Instant classic match. Nobody tried to, like, you know, like Chris didn't go overboard trying to steal the spotlight with a promo or anything. He just did his little thing, went out there, did what he does best, and wrestled a fucking sick match. Antilochus did what he did best, wrestled a great match.
Yeah.
Both of them just put on a clinic. You know, so far by this point in the show, I'm thinking this is going to be a classic show.
Yeah.
Even before the card had finished, I'm thinking and everyone's having a good time as well, and they're chatting and they're drinking, and I'm thinking this is going to be a life memory right here.
And with 3 matches from the end of the show.
Yeah, 3 matches from the end, and I'm already knowing that this is a classic because you got a little bit of everything that's already started to show up.
And you got me versus Aries for the Aussie title in the next matchup with my very lovely speech, I would say. I was really happy with my speech. But,
it was a really nice fucking speech, eh? Like,
I wanted to be able to shine a light on people that weren't able to be there on the day and name drop them. I thought it was important.
So, but the match itself was another case of a person who'd never wrestled in ICWS before, and most of us probably thought never would, in Arthur Aries. And you'd never had a match with him, so it was, again, just that kismet thing. Here's the final ICWS show. The veteran Aston Crude against this guy that's never wrestled an ICW before, but everyone knows that he's a hell good technical wrestler. This is going to be awesome. And it was. Aries, you know, you both knocked it out of the park. I could see, because you weren't drinking at the time, I could see that had a positive effect. You were moving faster than you had before. You were taking more bumps. You know, your facial expressions were better. Your vocalization was better. It was like the best. You know, I hadn't seen that Aston Crude since like early Schwa, when you were really keen on like wrestling in Schwa.
Wrestling properly.
It was like you were back at the best that you could be in that match, and Aries rose to the occasion.
I needed it. I needed that match because I'll be honest, like I wasn't happy with my recent WCWA matches at the time and how gassed I was getting as that match took place. So I needed a really good match, and Aries and I went out there and fucking tore it down, I'd say, and I was really happy with my promo afterwards as well.
It was a great match, and yeah.
Second last match of the show, you and Dan Zeppelin win the ICWS Tag Team Championship that's been vacated, taken off the hands of Alex Stone, who's obviously not going to be there to defend the titles because he hadn't been there since 2013. Thoughts on winning the tag titles with your friend Dan Zeppelin?
Well, I already spoke about how meaningful it was to me earlier on in the podcast, but obviously it meant the world to me to be able to spend that final moment with my friend Dan, and we were both ICWS originals, and so to win the tag titles with him was really a special thing for me. The match itself, we didn't know, in typical Dan fashion, and he didn't know what the fuck he wanted to do. In typical me fashion, I was like, oh, let's call it in the fucking ring. Because right up until we actually went out there for the match, I had every intention of like barely doing anything in the match. I was like, I've already had a match, I've had some beers, I probably won't do too much, you know, like I'll just soak it in. But then what ended up happening was like the crowd popped so big for me and Dan, like it was like they were actually excited to see us as a unit. So when they popped for us, like Dan even said to me afterwards, man, like my adrenaline was fucking pumping. His adrenaline was pumping, I mean. So we end up going in there and having this great match, and maybe it wasn't the best technical classic, but the people are popping for the shit that we're doing. and we're hitting all of our signature moves, and Kyle and Deacon are being heels, and they're back as a cohesive unit again, which we hadn't seen in years, and they seem to be enjoying it. And then I hit a fucking senton on Deacon. Everyone starts screaming for me to do a senton again, and Kyle just looks at me and goes, like, no. Because they wanted me to do a senton on both the two of them stacked up. And everyone kind of booed when I got rid of Kyle, but one thing that I never do is I never do something to another wrestler that they're not comfortable with. So if anyone was disappointed that I didn't do the double stack senton...
Fuck it, who cares?
No, I was asked by Kyle not to do it.
So Dan gets the pinfall.
Right. So Dan gets the pinfall. The crowd fucking pops. We're both thinking that it's actually turned out to be a surprisingly good match and a lot of fun to do. Dan gets the pinfall. I knew that at that point was when I wanted to do my little spiel. There was not much left that I could say that you hadn't already covered in your speech. So I just took the time to thank everybody for their friendship and let everyone know how grateful and proud I was to have had the opportunity to do ICWS and make all these friends. And, then me making my little speech, I think that inspired Dan to say a couple of words. And, because he did end up saying a couple of words, didn't he?
I don't think he did, actually.
He didn't?
No, I think he said nothing.
Maybe it was just to me that he said...
Must have been just to you.
Yeah, because I made my speech, and then I remember, Dan saying something to me about how important it was for him as well. And I actually remember, right after that match was where we were getting some photos with Rob Zeppelin and stuff, and that was the first point in the day where things started to feel pretty emotional, because, that really was, here we were, me and the Zeppelin brothers, and Knuckles was there, and this was 10 years to the day, man, 10 years of our lives.
And speaking of Knuckles, we got to our main event. Knuckles and Chaos, they went out there, and it's my favourite match on the show. Maybe not technically...
But it was the best match.
But in my opinion, the passion was there, the fans were into it, everyone loved it. Knuckles versus Chaos, main event. And Knuckles wins the championship, and as Chris Zeppelin said to me afterward, I was hoping so much that Knuckles would win, and I'm so glad that he did.
How fucking... That was... When that match happened, as soon as the 3 count happened in my mind, I was I knew we were in the midst of a classic, and now it just definitely is a classic. That's the best show ICWS has ever had, basically. I consider Twisted Metal 8 to be, the best show we ever had.
Excellent.
If you actually, really stack up against the other shows and think about all the elements that went in, that's, the best show we ever had. Or top 3.
And a hell of a way to go out.
Yeah. So... little bit of backstory, because we're wrapping up here. This is the final match of the show. Bit of backstory. The day before, Knuckles came over to my house with Chaos, and they both said to me, we've been talking on Messenger trying to think of something, and we both just think of wrestling in a different way, and we need a little bit of help fucking planning this thing, because we don't know what the fuck to do. So they both came over my house. They sat down at the table, and physically, we had a discussion where I would say, okay, first thing you want to do is display your power and whatever, hit a clothesline. Just that kind of thing. We're just discussing the match, and they're physically writing it down. Chaos always, like a true pro, writes down the spots in his book that he has. And then Nem also got that stuff down so he could memorize it. Then the next day, they're sitting there, and I know basically what's about to happen because I've just laid out the match with them, but I'm still popping like a fucking mark because they're executing it perfectly, and the crowd's responding exactly as we fucking wanted to. And absolutely, both guys knocked it out of the park. Nem rose to the occasion and stepped out of his comfort zone to do the match, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. Chaos deserves a lot of credit for fucking... carrying them through that match and taking on that responsibility of being in the main event of the last show, and he fucking knocked it out of the park as well. And that's why, after Nem became the first and last ICWS champion, he awarded the belt back to Chaos, because Chaos held that belt and represented it proudly when it was a really rocky time for ICWS. And he never complained, and he never stopped being appreciative that he was ICWS champion. And so if anyone deserved to keep that belt as a consolation prize, it was Chaos. And that was the cherry on top, was that Nem won the belt, but he gave the title back to Chaos at the end. And then we all got in the ring and had a beer bash and fucking started tearing the base apart. And
we wanted it to break. We were jumping up and down wanting it to break.
What a special time. And then part 2 of this fucking podcast is going to be hectic too, because then we got the final WZWA show to talk about.
Yeah, we got so much to cover, and nearly 2.5 hours now DJ has been dedicated to just ICWS 2015 and the final show. But there were so many stories that needed to be told. There were so many things and issues that I need to raise with you and for you to respond to. So we've gone quite some time talking about just ICWS in 2015 in the final show. So I guess we should put a bow on it and wrap it up there.
Yeah.
So thank you, DJ.
No problem, dude.
Appreciate it,
My
man.
pleasure.
And that is the story of 2015 ICWS from the mouth of DJ, the man that was in charge, and also the guy that was one of the founders of ICWS, and an integral part of the final show, Twisted Metal 8, which you can find on YouTube at your disposal. Thank you, DJ.
No problem.
And we'll be back again at some point with DJ on the GBYWN Australia podcast, talking about his final years in WZWA, talking about 2015, 2016, and 2017, and becoming a Hall of Famer. So we will be with you next time here on the podcast. I'm Aston Crude. We'll see you next time.